This program features live coverage of an African safari and may include animal kills and carcasses. Viewer discretion is advised.
Welcome to and beyond Phinda Private Game Reserve. As you can see, we've found a beautiful rhino on our runway this afternoon. My name is Kim. And behind the camera we have Craig, and we will be with you this morning. And I just want to welcome you aboard to your very own safari, live from the African wild. You're back with and beyond Phinda Private Game Reserve. We're still with this rhino. If you watch now, actually busy scent marking. Just saw its tail flick up. It's a really hot day here at and beyond Phinda Private Game Reserve. It's about 30 degrees Celsius, so we're in for a bit of a scorcher. And again, my name is Kim, and behind the camera we have Craig. And don't forget that this is actually a live safari, so please send your questions. You can send them to our website, which is wildearth.tv or #wildearth. Or if you're under 18, you can send your questions to kidsquestions@wildearth.tv. What we were doing this morning, well, I keep saying this morning, sorry, it's the afternoon. We went looking for those cheetah you were looking at this morning. We haven't managed to find them, but instead we found this male white rhino. And we've been watching him. He's been doing sort of a territorial display up and down this runway. And if you have a look how slowly he's walking, he's got his head right down to the ground. It's quite interesting behavior, because you get the sense, you can definitely see he's not slowing down to feed. You know, this isn't feeding behavior. He's walking slowly. He's scent marking as he's going, but mainly he's trying to pick up smells at the moment. And his head's really low down to the ground, and he's just checking if there's any females that are in estrus that have walked through his territory, or perhaps another male that might be trying to take over his territory. That's what he's on the patrol for now. Now, he hasn't picked up the scent of anything else, because you can see he's actually walking really slowly. If he did pick up the scent of a female in estrus, or another male who he was quite concerned about, he would actually walk quite quickly on that scent. It's quite an amazing thing to see if you've ever seen a rhino sort of trying to find... Oh, watch there. He's doing another territorial marking. You just saw him squirt some urine backwards. And then watch his feet now. Rosalind, rhinos can get up to 3.5 tons. I would say a big bull like this is probably around 3.5 tons. Normally 2 to 3 tons, maybe just about 3.5 tons. A little bit bigger than your black rhino, which is normally like 1.6 to 1.9 tons. So they're pretty big animals. You can imagine something like that. It's all compacted weight as well. I always joke about our vehicles, our big Land Cruisers that we drive around being our 2-ton flutes. Because it's just a small little joke, because we've got little holes in the sides of the bull bars. And as the wind blows like it's blowing right now, it makes a little whistling sound. So they're actually even heavier than some vehicles. I mean, if we're looking at the size of this rhino, you can kind of get an idea why it's so heavy. Really big. Kind of got quite a broad sort of rib cage. And a lot of the reason why they are so big is they've got a massive digestive system. It's not incredibly efficient. It's not sort of like a ruminant, which will regurgitate, grass and things and get a lot of nutrients out of it. We'll grind it down to really fine powder. Rhino are high in gut fermenters, which means they process their food very quickly, and as a result they have to have a very, very large intestine. So majority of what we see is actually their digestive system. That's why they are so massive. You need a large amount of space for that digestive system. And I'm sure you've actually seen the rhino dung and how coarse it is when it still comes down. You compare that to sort of antelope dung that you break open, you'll actually see it's a very fine powder in antelope dung, so it's really ground down. And rhino will actually have like very thick particles. They don't get a lot of nutrients from their food. This looks like this rhino is actually going to disappear into this thicket any minute. So what we're going to do is we're going to try and find those cheetah and see what they're up to. It's a good sign that they've walked off. So we're hoping that maybe they're up to something interesting. And we're going to send you to another live location.
From one large grey mammal to another, we have a hippo doing exactly what I would love to be doing right now, because it feels like I have landed on the sun. It is far too hot today. Apparently the temperature is 35 degrees Celsius, 95 degrees Fahrenheit, but it doesn't feel like that, that's for sure. My name is Lauren and I do have cat on camera today. I think I did well on the second attempt there. And we're going to admire this hippo for a few minutes and then we are going to head to the shade. Look at this hippo. Perfectly relaxed in the water. Immersed, hydrated, cool, relaxed, having a great time, one thinks. Now don't forget to ask your questions today and put in your lovely comments. You can head over the website now to do that. wildearth.tv, we want to hear from you. Now I think, as always on a hot day, water holes are the best place to check. I'm hoping for some swimming ellies today. Sorry hippo, but you're just not as much fun. Now this hippo is not always here. It's a male. I think it's a young boy. They do move water holes, especially if they're not territorial and they haven't got a harem of females. Then they can move water points. Are you ready for challenge of the day? Is that a dragonfly just down here at 1 o'clock? I think it is. One of my favourite insects. Yes, it is. Look at that. Summer is almost in full swing. Not quite yet, but almost. Wow. Dragonflies and damselflies belong to Odonata and is one of my favourite grouping of insects, as well as butterflies, of course. What a lovely sighting, but I do think it is time for us on the vehicle to head into the shade.
Good afternoon. Welcome to this end of the Sunset Safari, where a little baby impala was lying in the shade with its mummy until we came past, and now mummy, in typical impala style, has panicked, and so baby is panicked as well. As they go off, falls upon me to tell you that my name is Jomez Hindrai, and on camera today is the great mobster from Pretoria East, Niels the Hood de Klerk. And it also falls on me to tell you that this will be my last drive for the foreseeable future. So when we see each other again, I'm not sure. When or if we see each other again, I'm not sure. But hopefully we'll have a good drive together. Please ask us many questions. Send us hundreds of comments. Not many insults. You can send us jokes as well if you'd like to. That would be nice. Our plan this afternoon is to head off towards a point over there on the sort of northeastern parts of where I think we'll get signal. Because in Tswalu, the one-eyed leopardess was found there this morning, and she killed a baby impala. Mercifully not that impala, of course. That one's still alive. You could see that by the fact that it was moving. And hopefully we'll find Tswalu in a tree with her kill, and we'll have some signal. Those are three things that we want. I know it's a stretch, but we hope. I just want to tell you something about that little baby impala. I went on a run today, and... Excuse me, Niels. Let me turn around a little. And I startled 4 impala, 2 ewes and 2 lambs. And one of the lambs ran off with its mother, and the third ewe, or the second ewe, ran off with the other 2. And the one lamb froze in the road as I ran up. So I just kept going gently. I didn't want to go into the bush and freak it out, because that probably would have just caused it even more panic than it was feeling. And eventually it just kind of took, I don't know, maybe 3 steps off the road. And I just carried on going. I didn't stop next to it because, again, that would have freaked it out. But when I did run past it, it was about 1.5 meters from me, so about 4 feet away, and clearly frozen stiff, and obviously hadn't learnt yet the response to a threat, and it hadn't quite refined its fight or flight mechanism or strategy, and hadn't learned it from its mother, or maybe it's got a small screw loose, I don't know. Let's hope it learns sometime during the course of the next day or two, because this really is bonanza time for all of the predators. So that one's gone off into the bush. We'll head off towards where the leopard was, and we'll just quickly cast our eye over what is known as First Rock here on Torchwood. And that is because First Rock is A, very beautiful, and B, quite frequently has something drinking from the little pools and puddles that occur thereupon. I always look under this bush because it looks like an ideal spot for a leopard to hide. And it depends entirely on the animal. So, for lions, and depends actually on the individual animal, not only just the species. If the Nkuhuma pride, you'll hunt almost exclusively at night time into the early morning. If you're some of the leopards here, you'll hunt any time, normally crepuscularly, so just before dawn and just after dusk. That is when they do most of their hunting, but leopards will hunt any time of the day. If you're a wild dog, you'll go just before dawn and just before dusk. So it really does depend on what animal you are. Talamati pride tends to do their hunting, from the little I know of them, often in a bit more light than the Nkuhuma pride will choose to do, but yeah, it really does vary. I think we're going to lose signal here, Jarrett, so I would suggest we go elsewhere for now to avoid a crash cut, but we can try it. It's just this little dip here that's not so good. We might be okay. Just look at this there's just a nice puddle around here. Yeah, I think let's head off somewhere else for now.
I am racing, not quite Ferrari safarying, but racing You see that beautiful patch of shade up ahead? That's where I'm heading. And we've checked one water hole, so it's now time for us to check the other water hole. Now, I have to say, it is the 16th of November, I think. And I haven't heard a single call from a woodlands kingfisher. Cheep, chirr, something like that. That was not a very good attempt. But not one peep or one chip, which I'm quite surprised at. Normally it's October, November that we do see them. And at this little pan where we're heading to right now, not a sign of a weaver yet. Now, normally the weavers come for summer, they advertise it's breeding season, and there's not one single weaver being sighted there, which really surprises me. So, we have a warthog. Can we get a view from here? There's absolutely no shade like I was hoping for. I think this warthog has been bathing. Oh! And off we go, off we trot. Now in Ethiopia, in the Bali Mountains, the warthogs are remarkably habituated. They are very friendly, not skittish in the slightest. But there's hardly any predators there. The reason the warthogs are so skittish, at least in this area, is because of the real high density of predators. We are so lucky in the number of leopards that we have here, and of course lion prides, and wild dogs, and hyenas. Occasionally cheetah, but the Sabi Sands is really not the ideal sort of scenario for cheetah. Not a single weaver in sight. I keep coming back to check each day. And it's still pretty much empty. Oh. Roy. That is such a tricky question. I'm going to answer it as we quickly head to Twin Dams to check. I've got so many areas that I want to check today. What is my favourite bird? I love the kingfisher family. Not necessarily the woodlands. I love the pygmy. I love the brown-hooded. I love the pied, the malachite. I've obviously got a soft spot for spotted eagle owls, in case you couldn't tell. A lot of the raptors really impress me, including vultures. Bless you. Okay, Twin Dams hasn't brought much luck either. Vultures are just like hyenas, completely in the same category as hyenas. Nobody likes them, and yet they are the ecosystem heroes out here. They clean up the environment that no one else wants to clean up. They're scavengers, but they have a purpose. And although, yes, they're known to... Oh, we have got some terrapins. Fabulous. And a big monitor lizard down here. Okay, I'm going to move forward for you and see. Let's see if we can get the monitor lizard. Oh, you can get it from here. It's actually nice to see a water monitor lizard in the water. So, Roy, in answer to your question, I'm not sure I can answer your question. I love the wax bills. You've really stumped me there, Roy. I'm going to be thinking about all my favourite birds for the rest of the afternoon now. So that's us checked 2 water holes, many more to go.
Welcome back to and Beyond Pindar Private Game Reserve. We went off trying to see if we could find this cheetah again, and we just did a bit of a loop around our airstrip trying to see if there's any spot under the shade where they might be trying to get out of the sun. Haven't managed to find them so far, but what did catch my attention is as I was driving past this thicket of trees, we actually heard a canary calling and saw one sitting there, and it caught my attention because these palm leaves that you see in front of you are a very special type of palm. It's called a lala palm, and it's one of the reasons that we have an incredibly special bird on and beyond Phinda Private Game Reserve, and it's called a lemon-breasted canary. Now, the canary that I stopped and looked at was actually a yellow-fronted canary, so it was just by coincidence that it was near these lala palms. But the reason we get the lemon-breasted canary is because of these little lala palms. They actually make their nests in the folds of these palm leaves. And it's really interesting nesting behavior. You know, you get a whole lot of variety of nesting behavior. You know, the kingfisher family that Lauren was talking about, a lot of them make their nests in embankments, sand embankments. You get a lot of different birds that use grass and things, make their nests up in thorn trees. You know, the thorns providing some protection for their very delicate nests. You get nests that actually aren't nests at all. They just lay there. Some birds, especially, you know, the lapwing family sort of thing, they'll lay their eggs out in the open and rely on the eggs sort of camouflage to keep those eggs safe. But the lemon-breasted canary, here's my pen, has this incredibly unique nest, and it looks very much like this. So you can see the palm leaves would actually fold around, and they would build a nest of grass and lay their eggs right in the middle there. So that is why we stopped and had a look at this very special tree. I did a little bit of investigating. No nests that I could find, unfortunately, but it's always worth a look when you go and have a look at these lala palms. I'm sure you've seen them all over before, these lala palms, because they are what is responsible for those beautiful woven baskets and bags that we find in many of our African craft stores. And also one of the reasons you often don't see incredibly tall lala palm trees. You know, they are sort of harvested for their leaves, those long, thin sort of segments. You can imagine how lovely those are to weave together. And if you have a look even at the dead ones, you can see that they've retained their structure really well. They haven't sort of disintegrated, so they're really useful for making sort of arts and crafts. So that is one of the uses of the lala palm. They're also used to make beer, if you can believe it. There's an African sort of beer that's made from the lala palms, which I've yet to taste, but I'm sure it's really good. And while we're looking here, I can actually see that there's a nest of some other sort of animal. If you look at that dead section right in the middle, it's a trunk that's completely covered in this red sandy soil. And the reason it's so red is if we look at the soil around it, it's very red in color, which makes us know that this soil is rich in iron oxide. That's what gives it that reddy tinge. And that would be a termite's nest. They've actually made their nest all the way up into the middle of that tree. You can see how it's caked completely in mud, and there's a whole lot of holes in it. It's quite an interesting one, you know, not to have a mound, but actually use the outer layer of that tree to sort of safeguard their mud structure. And also they'll be able to feed on the inside in the meantime. But you can see it's quite old, it's broken open. You can see the little tunnels, those little openings right there. So it's not a recent termite mound. You know, that would obviously be something that's been repaired. Chantal, sometimes trees have bad hair days too. I think this one in particular, you can see it's right out in the open. It's, you know, that one's it's quite dead, so it's been fed off of and used as a structure of some sorts. And the rest of them have also been through the works, and it's a really cool comment actually, because now we're looking at the leaves and things, and you can actually see how they've been ripped off. Now, all I can imagine is that an elephant would have done that. I've never actually seen an elephant feed on lala palms before, but I'm just looking at the height of how those leaves have been chopped off, and all I can think of is elephant. I can't think of anything else that would get up there. So it's quite an interesting comment there. Quite a sight to actually see them trying to feed on these lala palm leaves. And I'm sure any rangers who've been walking in the bush, they'll know these lala palms, because if you listen carefully now, I'm going to give it a little bit of a minute and you can listen to how they sort of move in the wind. Can you hear that rustling? So that rustling would often sound like an animal to us, and it gives us quite a fright. Chris has asked us if these canaries are related to domesticated canaries, and the answer is yes. You know, any family of canaries is very closely related. It's really, you know, there'll be slightly smaller adaptations based on their diet and where they thrive. You know, they all slightly better adapted to different environments, and that's why you'll get different bird distributions. I'm not entirely sure what canaries are domesticated, I have to admit that. But I would imagine it might be some species that aren't sort of endemic to the area. I know things, you know, popular birds that are kept in cages and things aren't generally endemic to the area, so it can be quite devastating to the environment if they're ever released. So if anyone wants to give their bird freedom, just think twice about that, because you can start, you know, populations of birds that shouldn't really be in the area. Sorry, not endemic, but yeah, basically you don't want a bird that doesn't occur in the area to be released, because they can be quite invasive. You know, if they don't have any natural predators, they might outcompete other birds, and they can actually, the population can explode and cause a whole lot of havoc on ecosystems. I'm sure any of our viewers around South Africa, especially in the Johannesburg region, has seen, you know, those rosy-cheeked lovebirds, or rosy-throated lovebirds all around, and that's from sort of domesticated birds being released. So just be careful of that, viewers. It's sometimes lovely to just stop and have a look at the trees. I was hoping some birds might fly into this area, but it doesn't seem to be the case. So we are going to keep on looking for these cheetah and just keep an eye out for anything interesting that's going on this afternoon. I'm sure we'll be back with you shortly.
Well, you can't drive the Mulwati without checking on Sepwick's house. I'm actually looking for leopards. James is on his way to Nsele, who's got a kill, and I'm scratching around for possibly Tlalamba. But I can't drive past. You all know that. So, if any of you were not on the sunrise safari, we managed to find Olivia on her own. And again, she's alone. I wonder if Mom has left her completely today. I got asked a question this morning and can't remember who by. Apparently that was Joy. You were asking about my favourite bird and not Roy. I apologise, Joy. Forgive me. But yes, this morning's question was about the period of time that Mum will leave Olivia for. And I think she has been leaving her for quite some time, and it's just getting longer and longer now. Prolonged periods of time that Olivia is going to have to sort of fend for herself. Stay cool or stay warm. Move, exercise, and make sure that no predators come. I imagine she'll be trying to stay cool right now. I can't even see where her head is. I think she's got her head sort of positioned under the stick in the crevice to keep nice and cool on a day like today. But otherwise, it's very difficult to tell. I think we're looking at a bottom view. You see how fine the feathers are? The down feathers. You can also see lots of blood feathers as well, which I recently discovered to one of your kindness that is called pin feathers. A far more pleasant way to say it than blood feathers. Nathan, I love how you're saying he or her. Yes, Olivia has very much got her eyes open. Although she's sleeping most of the time, she's very much got her eyes open. It normally happens around day 7. But before they open, they're very much sealed shut, completely artificial. But yes, they're very much open now. We've managed to see her on quite a few occasions with their eyes open, which is really, really lovely to see. It's very difficult for us to see our monitor in bright light like this, but I don't think we can see her head from this angle. Ah, yes, there we go, her head's tucked away. That's the leg there that she just moved, so we know she's still alive. Aaron, yes. So if you think of an adult, I am wondering if I can find you a photo of an adult somewhere. Because Mum's not here to do the comparison to. I'm just going to grab my bird book and show you what the adult looks like. So yes, once all the other feathers start coming through and start developing, she'll get sort of almost like a barred appearance, like the sort of barred owlet almost. And she'll change from the grey down that she is just now into a much, much deeper brown. We're going to see lots of changes in her soon. Now, the ear tufts are sort of the last things to show, but you will sort of start to see 2 little bumps on her head, and slowly but surely they will turn into the ear tufts that make spotted eagle owls very, very well known. Okay. I'm not used to using this book anymore. I'm so used to using my bird app. Here we have it. So down here, number 3 is a drawing of an adult spotted eagle owl. So you can see there's a lot of different colorations there. I'm not very well organised today. I don't have my porky pointer either. Here's a mini one. And you can see there's the tufts. They will not develop until much later. And you can see there's a facial disc that has that black outline or black brown. That's still to appear. And if you just look where I'm pointing, you can see it's almost got like a barred appearance on the feathers. And all down here, they will start to emerge very, very soon, believe it or not. You'll start to see that. And her sort of wing and her back will become very, very dark. So from this drawing that I'm showing you right now to what we're looking at on the embankment there is remarkably different. We actually just saw a water monitor lizard climbing up the embankment further back. Beach girl, funny you should say that. That's exactly what I am thinking. To admit, this is the first day that I've really seen her properly without Mum, and I thought she would be in a little bit more of an upright position. Now, they are known to, even though they have the ability to stand and squat, they are known to just, when they sleep, just lie flat on their tummy like this. But I really thought we would have seen her standing by now, and we haven't. So maybe, I mean, we saw her on the 1st, so there's no denying that she's at least 16 days old. But maybe she's just a little bit behind in the development. I can't think why, but Beach Girl, you hit the nail on the head. I honestly thought I would have seen her standing by now. But James had her squatting. So I think it's just maybe at night time, because they're primarily nocturnal, we'll maybe start to see her standing a lot more. And it's very, very hot. The temperatures are phenomenal today. So she's probably just trying to keep her cool. Okay, well, good afternoon, Olivia. We're going to check the rest of the Mulwati and see what we can find.
So there's a guinea fowl also trying to keep cool by approaching the water. It's not the one making those big splashes though. The elephant that's in the dam has already kept itself cool. It's now heading off to go and maybe feed in the shade on this drainage line because it is absolutely sweltering this afternoon. But it's absolutely wonderful if you are an elephant and you like to go and have a bit of a swim. So, hi everyone, my name is Mike, and you joined us here at Pridelands with BK behind the camera. And as I said, it is very, very sweltering, but gorgeous. There's a bit of a breeze also picking up now. The sun is doing a very strange thing as well. It's creating a big halo around the sun. So when we look at the sun, you can see this halo around it. So I wonder if that is now pointing to some interesting weather up ahead. You can see this big elephant bull who's got two, not one but two broken tusks. He's obviously had a very busy life, using those as weapons, as tools, but he's going to head over this dam wall, I suspect, to join the other elephant that was in the waterhole just a moment ago. Or he's going to choose the slightly more difficult path, I find. Let's see how he manages to navigate this fallen tree. Sometimes it's quite comical, especially when there are young elephants. They seem to struggle to lift their feet high enough to get over it. Oh, but he's extremely competent. It was like watching a show horse jumping over a hurdle. You hear the trumpets and the flapping ears. He's actually looking towards the warthog. There's a warthog that's mud bathing that it doesn't seem to like very much. Maybe this is the very brave warthog. Oh, never mind, it's not a brave warthog. It is off. Does not want to tangle. This elephant has got two broken tusks. That tells me that he's a bit of a battler. So he's probably making a wise decision by moving out of the way of this elephant, who might now, after having a swim, cover himself in a bit of mud exactly where that warthog was bathing. And there you go. He is going to cover himself in mud. No point mud bathing and then swimming. You got to swim first, then mud bathe. Who needs to be clean, right? It's really, really awesome how they are able to cover themselves completely in this mud. Look at all the different ways. The top of its head, under its belly, behind its ears, everywhere must be covered in order to protect itself from this heat. It will dry pretty quickly, so you'll find usually after mud bathing it'll go into the shade. Adash, elephants probably can swim. They won't really need to swim very much because they're very, very tall, and so most of the water they move through, they can, walk along the bottom, and they just have their trunk sticking up to breathe if it's that deep. But I feel like I've heard stories or seen pictures of elephants on the coast. Maybe I'm trying to think where in Africa I saw it, when the elephants were in the waves, the surf of the ocean, and then they were swimming a little bit, and they maybe even found the elephants on an island which was quite far from the mainland. But I don't quote me on that, I could be wrong. I think maybe in Gabon there's definitely records of elephants on the beaches. I don't know whether they swim, but I'm sure, like most animals, they have the capacity to swim. It's probably not going to be very graceful, to be honest. Its body shape doesn't seem to lend itself to, very swift and streamlined water movement, but they seem to do all right. I don't know. PK, have you ever seen an elephant swimming before? Like properly swimming? No. Maybe a baby elephant if it's like trying to cross very deep water. Adash, that's a good question. But I'll have to do some searching for some videos. So look at this elephant now. So it's covered itself in the mud. You can see it's wet, it's covered in mud, and now it's going to walk up towards those larger trees, probably where there's a bit of shade, and start to feed. Remember, elephants are bulk feeders, so they just need to feed as much as they can. And that's a big elephant. That's probably weighing 3 to 4 tons. So he needs a lot of food. So he'll be feeding most of the day, only taking short breaks here and there in order to swim. He might even go and have a nap, actually. It's very hot. And look how his trunk is very long and extended and lying on the ground. Often they do this when they're very relaxed. So maybe he's just off to have a bit of a nap.
Good day and welcome to Tswalu Kalahari. Another beautiful day here at the Kalahari. There's a bit of overcast coming our way. We've had a bit of a spit here and there. It looks very promising. My name is Obakeng, and behind the camera there we've got Dave doing such an excellent job. If you look there in the background, we've got some yellow-billed hornbills. Just took off. Dave just gone to the ground there. But it was two yellow-billed hornbills, male and female, that we think could be also looking for potential nests around here. And interesting enough, we do know that there is a woodpecker here that has made a bit of a cavity for itself to nest, but these guys would also make or use cavities in trees. They're not brood parasites to woodpeckers, but if shove comes to push and they do find a hole like that, they would definitely be willing to use such. So what will happen is the female would actually pluck her feathers, line the inside of that cavity, and the male would actually seal this female in for incubation. And on a daily basis, because they are a monogamous pair, this male would be tasked to actually feed this female. So he's gone. Our plans for this afternoon would probably be try to look for maybe lions, I would say. As for meerkats, wouldn't work with weather like this. They'll probably be under a barrel or so. So follow us. We're gonna embark on this safari and try find lions and see how this goes. Alrighty, let's do it. It's a beautiful formation of clouds, Casita, and where we are, it's interesting how our clouds formation come. It's moisture coming from all the way from places like Upington, which is more south of our position, and because we've got these corona bags, when that moisture comes, it hits the corona bag, and that's how our clouds would start building up. Hoping we're gonna be lucky. We've had a bit of moisture, so everything we're gonna be seeing is gonna be everything new, meaning that it must be after the little bit of rain that we must have had. So that will help us with our trekking. To get our first fresh tracks, I'm going to be sending you off to another very beautiful location in Africa. Enjoy.
Caught us having a little break in the shade. Yes, sometimes we just need to cool down. Now, James is with Insele, who made a kill this morning, and it was another baby impala. And he's got no signal, so we're switching out, and I think maybe we can stop here and admire some of the flowers if we see any. What about that beautiful roadside pimpernel? One of my favorites. That bright orange flower. Copy. Thanks, James. Sorry, we were just doing a little bit of a switch out there. There you go. Isn't that colour just magnificent in the bush? And bright colours do attract butterflies, believe it or not. When I was in the Amazon, I lived in the Ecuadorian Amazon for a little while. We had many projects sort of on the go. One of them was to do with jaguars, but one of them was to do with butterflies. And the Amazon, the way I describe it, is so incredibly noisy. It's never silent, never get a moment's peace, and it's almost like everything is on steroids. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that or not, but everything is so much bigger. The frogs are huge, the toads are huge, the snakes are ginormous, the butterflies are just out of this world. Of course, it's different species from the species we would see here, but they are just huge in size. Everything is very large and magnificent. And the study was to see whether different species of butterflies were attracted to different colours. And overall, the result was that butterflies are attracted to bright flowers. And of course, it's a mechanism from the flower to draw the insects in as part of the sort of pollination program. There's many different pollinators: bees, birds, bats. Bats pollinate. Moths. Moths don't get enough credit, I always feel, because they are, most of them, not all of them, are nocturnal. We don't see them doing the job, but they're actually doing the pollination at night time and nobody recognises them for it. But yes, you do get diurnal moths as well. Okay, I'm going to need to get on my maps because I don't actually know where I'm going. I have been given a pin to find Unsele. Unsele, our wonderful leopardess with one eye, and she appears to be hanging around the southern section of Buffelshoek, the northeast section of Juma, and the northwest section of Torchwood. So I don't really know what her territory is at the moment, and I've never been with her when she's sawed or she's scent marked, so I don't know if she's behaving in a territorial manner or not. Shade. Back in the sun. Oh my goodness, what's with all the favourites today? It's very hard to choose a favourite. What is my favourite plant? Oh. Benjamin, I've always had a thing for lilies. And I used to always give lilies as a gift. And as I got older, I realised we shouldn't pluck flowers. We shouldn't pluck them out the ground. We shouldn't do that. I used to always pluck daffodils out my mum's garden and then give her them. She was never happy. But now I give gifts to friends, and it's always a packet of seeds that the friend can grow, or a bulb that they can plant, or an actual plant in a pot. But anyway, I love lilies, so I love the crinum lilies out here, the candy striped lilies. They are stunning. But I think out here, the wild basil. I think if I had to choose, Benjamin, you're forcing me to choose, it's going to be the wild basil. Stunning, the colours, the odour. There you go. I still haven't came up with my bird yet, Joy, but I'm working on it. There's just so many. Okay, I'm not paying attention to where I'm going, everyone. I haven't seen any crinum lilies blooming yet. I also haven't seen any termites. I haven't heard the woodlands. And there's really not enough butterfly species around to sort of stop and start the list. I've started the list. Okay, I'm sorry, FC, but I have to get on my map to know where I'm going. I've been summoned to take over a sighting. And I don't actually know where I'm heading. I have a funny feeling it's this way. So here is a perfect spot of shade for me to get on that phone and actually find out where I'm going.
Welcome back to Anvia and Pinda Private Game Reserve. When last you were with us, we were looking at that lala palm and discussing a bit of canary behavior. I know Lauren's been talking about her favorite flowers, and I found quite an interesting tree as we going along. And I'm sure many of our viewers, especially our South African viewers, or those who have been to the bush in South Africa, are very familiar with this one. Now, it's actually called a buffalo thorn, but what other people might know it as is a wachabiki. And how we can identify it is it's got a very unique sort of identifying feature. On the branches, you can see each pair of thorns has got one hooked one and one straight one. And that is how it's got the nickname wachabiki, which means wait a little bit. Because as you're walking through, inevitably you're going to get caught on this. And in fact, when we're busy tracking animals, the amount of times that I've tried to duck under this and my hat's been caught out and stayed behind is too many to count. So it's a beautiful tree, and in fact it's really very important to the culture around the area. Now, there's a whole lot of different African cultures that do believe in that this is an incredibly powerful plant. And I'm hoping I don't get any of the details wrong, but how this tree is used is that when a family member passes away, the African culture believes that the spirit of the person who passes away must be brought back to the home so that it can rest in peace. So one of the family members, anyone who does not have any existing sort of altercations with the person who passed away, so no family drama or anything like that, has to then take a branch, probably quite a long branch, and travel with this branch to where the family member passed away. And when they get there, they actually have to speak to the spirit and say, please come with us. You know, you are at peace. We want you to come home. And they'll collect the spirit with this branch. And then they actually have to travel home with the branch. And the whole time they have to talk to the branch saying, it's okay, you're with family, you're safe now, we're taking you home. Especially when they go through tunnels, they'll have to say, don't worry, there's a tunnel, but you're still with me. And what I find quite interesting is if they take public transport, they have to pay for two people, themselves and the spirit that they're bringing with. So if you ever do see someone walking around on the streets or in a taxi with one of these branches, you know that they are just collecting their loved ones' souls. And what they do then is once they get back to the family home, they will have to feed this branch to a goat. And that is the most important part of this whole thing, because if the goat feeds on the branch quite happily, then the spirit has come back, there's no ill feelings, and it's come to rest. And then they will slaughter the goat and have a ceremony. If the goat refuses to feed on the branch, it is believed that something's gone terribly wrong, that the spirit is not with them anymore, and they have to repeat the whole process over again and go and try and collect that spirit. So that is it from a cultural perspective. From a wildlife perspective, it is also a very interesting tree, because now we spoke a little bit earlier about birds' nests, and it's often a tree that you will see a whole lot of birds using to nest in. I can't see any examples of that right now, but you can imagine with all these thorns, snakes and things will have a bit of a difficulty navigating these branches to get into those nests. So this is one of the ones that I've seen birds nest in more often. Especially, you can imagine trying to get right into the middle. Even animals or anything that's trying to get to that nest is going to have a huge problem trying to navigate through all these thorns. So it is a very useful sort of tree in the ecosystem, this little buffalo thorn. And a really, really beautiful one. Now you'll see a bit of feeding on the sides here. Sorry, I didn't get that name. I think it was Zave or Dave. I'm not quite sure. But thank you very much for your question. Zay. Okay, all right. Thanks very much for your question, Zay. And it's a really good one. What animals do feed on these sort of trees? And it's ones that can navigate the thorns quite easily. Ones that I see quite commonly feed on are giraffes, actually, if you can believe it. You know, they use their long necks to actually lean down and feed on these trees. I've also seen kudu feed on them. Inyala will also feed on them, but very delicately. Black rhino will feed on a buffalo thorn. And even elephants to a certain extent. So anything that is able to, you know, have a prehensile lip that can sort of go for the leaves and try and move around those thorns. If you have a look at where the thorns are placed in comparison to the leaves, and see they're sort of at the base of each of these small shoots, and then along the actual branch itself. You see that they shoot off, so animals will be able to sort of nip right below the base of the leaf and be able to eat them quite comfortably without getting pricked with these very long thorns, provided that they have very prehensile lips, which means that they can use their lips very agilely, and can navigate around these thorns. So all in all, quite an important tree for our ecosystem. And we did actually have some tracks of these cheetah walking up this road that we are now. So we're going to carry on this road and hopefully we can track those cheetah down. I don't think they would have gone too far in heat like this, but they might also be lying in shade and difficult to spot. So let's see if we can spot them, and we're going to send you to another live location.
Here, we do not have Tswalu the leopard. We've got a tall white squill. We did have Tswalu the leopard. Fortunately, she did have her kill, so we had 2 out of 3, which was pretty good. But the third of 3 we did not have, which is, of course, Signal. So we sent Lauren, and maybe she will bring you the joys of the one-eyed leopardess. Anyway, this is a tall white squill, and you can see it's tall because, well, it's taller than me, and I'm an enormous human being. I stand at about 5 feet and 8 inches, which is not actually enormous. And this is about 6'4"-ish, I guess. Fully grown. And they come early in the springtime, and then they pass on into, I suppose, the soil, with their seeds being cast about by the wind or some idiot shaking them like this. The other plant that I found while I was standing here cooking quietly in the sun, not very quietly, I must confess, was Parotis patens. I think it's a very pretty grass. Never remember its English name. I think it's the cat's tail. Is it cat's tail? I think it's cat's tail. But it's got a lovely subtle purple colour on the awns that come off the seeds. And what an honour it would be if we could find Tragus berteronianus. That's not a rude word. To the grass species that is found here, otherwise known as the carrot seed grass. Tragus berteronianus. On we go. We're going to go and check out quickly at Buffelshoek Dam, which is a waterhole northeast of Djuma, and then we'll go and see what's happening with those hounds that were around this morning. That would be very nice to see them. This is a very hot day, but there's a nice coolish breeze. But I was slightly distressed to see that there's very little rain coming in the next few days. The result depends on the damage to the tree. So, you know, they just form scar tissue, a little bit like a human being does. If let's say a marula tree is debarked in a certain area, it will produce, I don't actually know what it is, but it'll produce a kind of specialized bark around the wound that sort of seals it off, and with any luck it'll be able to close the wound. But if it's a big wound, it won't close it, and you know, then it is vulnerable to attack from pathogens. A lot of the trees out here, if they're broken over and in fact killed above ground entirely, will have sufficient nutrition in their rootstocks to coppice, and coppice means to grow from the roots. So if I chopped any of these combretum trees that we're driving past down at the roots, they'd grow again. They'd create a sort of multi-stemmed tree, which is called coppicing. And so they don't try and prevent injury, or they don't expend a huge amount on thorns and that sort of defense. They just grow again if they're pushed over. And so there are a lot of different strategies they have to being damaged. It's quite difficult out here to actually kill a tree, believe it or not. The best way to do it, if you happen to be a tree murderer, is to ring bark it, and then you stop it growing above the ground, and that's how marula trees die generally. It's how knobthorn trees die generally. I don't know that if you ring barked a combretum tree, I think it's quite possible that that tree would simply push out other shoots from the base. So it would just sacrifice the affected limb. Some trees, when they get sick in a limb, or if they're nutritionally stressed, will sacrifice a limb. They'll just cut off supply to it and from it, and it'll die and drop off. So lots of different ways. It's quite interesting. I haven't thought about that for a long time. So we'll head down to the water and see what's there. This bird has been in this tree twice.
Welcome back to Tswalu Kalahari. What we have there is some springbok. Looks like a male and a female. If you look at the one right in front, that would be the female with the thinner horns, and the one slight behind would be the male with a slightly thicker horns there. They keep looking in one particular direction, and that's the direction we want to investigate in. I'm hoping maybe it could be an indicator that they know something that we don't know, and lead us into those lions maybe. There is no tracks that I've picked up as yet, but I think we would be close because they just constantly look in one direction. So we'll go and investigate there. Obviously, these guys would be a little bit too agile for lions, but it doesn't mean that lions will never go for them. They will definitely, if they catch them off guard, will definitely go for them. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how far these lions maybe could be. So I'm just going to try go around and see if we can pick up something from that side. It's actually more than just two. Dakari, a very good question. Do we use oxpeckers to track predators? Actually not. If you think about it, look at that crossing. Look at those jumps. Look at those jumps. Beautiful. Sorry, I got derailed there a little bit. If you look at predators, they don't get a lot of oxpeckers as your prey species. Hence, it's not a very good indicator to try and rely on oxpeckers for predators. Because remember, what oxpeckers are after, they after those ectoparasites, things like your ticks and so on. So with prey species, you get a lot of those as they are hosts, and that's why you can actually use oxpeckers to know if there's prey species around. And also very interesting, you don't necessarily get oxpeckers also on elephants, and it's very simple as to why. With elephants, they've got sebaceous glands that actually secrete this hormone that oxpeckers don't really like, and that's why you don't also get oxpeckers on elephants, but you'll definitely get them on things like your buffalo, your giraffe, your kudu, and so on. But also very interesting to mention that here in Tswalu, we don't really see a lot of oxpeckers because our tick load is not the most, or it's not very high. But what we do encounter here is something called a louse fly. Now, if I had to paint a picture, I like painting picture with words. Think of a tick. Give it more like pincers, gory pincers to be more exact, and give it wings. So it's definitely something like that. It looks like a tick that could fly, and that's what we deal with here. And those are actually very species specific about where they would host and where they would breed amongst these animals. So with certain species, you are more likely to find more louse flies on them than others, and that's what we predominantly deal with here in the Kalahari. But a very good question and a very interesting question coming from you there. So we're going to continue in this direction, see if I can pick up anything on these lions. Something tells me we're very close in the back of my head, so let's go find out. While we're still trying to follow here and find out what was happening, I'll send you off to another property in Africa.
We made it to Nsele, just very far east on Torchwood, and she does have a baby impala. Unfortunately, most predators will seize the baby impalas right now, and they know it. They know that summer brings a plethora of food. Young impalas are easy to catch, the perfect snack. She's not even hoisted it, it's on the ground. And she's full, look at that bulging tummy. A quick snack, an easy snack. You can probably finish it in one day and then leave the remains. And I also think that's another reason we're not really seeing much of the hyenas. I don't think the adults are spending as much time at the den because there's just food everywhere. All the predators are hunting. They're following all the predators. So they will come to the den, but I do very much think that's at night time. So Nsele, for those of you who are possibly not familiar with her, she's also quite new to us. She's familiar to the area, but in terms of wild earth, she's quite new. James, Davy and I found her a good few months back, wandering east from Simbambili. Oh, she's hot and bothered. And as you can see, she's blind in one eye. She's related to Tiani, the most gorgeous leopardess. And she appears to be quite nomadic in behaviour. Now, nomadic is not solitary. Solitary is a life of solitude on your own, which all leopards have, quote unquote. But nomadic is when you're not territorial. So Nsele can be sort of classified as both nomadic and solitary. I think she's absolutely stunning. She's an interesting cat. We don't really understand her movements. Very many people ask us, I don't know. I really don't know. I'm not sure anybody knows. I would guess something sharp pierced it. Whether it was a porcupine quill the wrong choice of dinner, or whether it was maybe a battle with another leopard. Female leopards do fight, so something went wrong. So I really actually don't know. She was born in early 2019, so she's almost 12. So she's an older leopardess, just 2 years younger than Tandy. And it's hard to say if she is definitely nomadic or not, because I've not seen her being territorial. I've not seen her enough. Well, Chanel, she's got a snack right there. Right next to her, she's got a baby impala. And she's surviving and thriving. She's had this missing eye for a very, very long time. Apologies. And leopards do have binocular vision. Their vision is said to be 7 times greater than humans. And the fact that it's binocular allows them to sort of really gauge depth and distance. And that's how they can so accurately hunt. And just like your eye would survive without an eye, so will she. She's clearly thriving and her body will adapt. Now, if you cover your right eye, for example, for a prolonged period of time, your left eye starts to adapt. Now, a completely blind leopard, I'm not sure would survive. But just like hukamuri, just like purple eye, just like blue eye, most felids will survive. And I'm going to teach you something. Let's see. An optician once taught me this. So, of course, we're symmetrical down the middle, but you'll always have one side of your body more dominant than the other. You'll always have one side bigger, maybe one eyeball bigger, maybe one breast, maybe one leg will always be slightly bigger. So you're going to have one dominant eye. And if you want to discover what your dominant eye is, look ahead. I'm going to do it this way so you can see, and choose something in the distance, be it your TV, your laptop, your phone. I've got a dead tree, okay? So make a triangle with your fingers and put that tree in the center as you're using both eyes of the triangle. Now, close one eye. So I'm going to close my right eye like this. Okay? And the tree's still in the center of the triangle. Now I'm going to close my left eye. And the tree's completely moved. It's almost out of the triangle. So the eye that keeps the object that you're focusing on in the center of the triangle is your dominant eye. So when I close my right, the tree is still in the center, which means my left eye is my dominant eye. It's doing all the work. So Nsele will be exactly the same. She's a mammal. She'll have a more dominant eye. And hopefully, now that she's lost one eye, the eye that's remaining, which is her left eye, will obviously become more dominant. The brain will be sending signals to that eye will be sending signals to the brain, and it will take over as the dominant eye, and she'll still survive and thrive. So I hope you're all trying that at home with the triangle. And it just allows you to see which is your more dominant eye. And that doesn't mean which eye has the better vision. By the way, it just means which is more dominant. In terms of vision, my left eye is actually the weakest. So I really don't think her eye injury affects her very much at all. She'll adjust to it. She'll adjust her hunting techniques to only having one eye. Oh, you'll need to ask that question from Nigel one more time, Jared. I hear sizes. What's the other part of that question? Types. Do they see animal types or just sizes? Do they see animal types? I wonder if you mean species, Nigel? Can they identify between the species? I'm going to guess that's what that means. Yes, they will be able to identify between the species. Absolutely. I do not think they just see size. I think they will be able to identify the species. They do have good vision. 7 times better than ours, they say, due to all those extra rods and cones. And I think they know exactly what they're going for. All predators do. Even the dogs yesterday, of course, the zebra is much bigger than the dog, so yes, size comes into play. But they knew, this is a challenge, this is not for us. I think they will absolutely be able to identify. They probably won't call them the names that we call them, but yes, I really do believe that predators can identify between species. And I also believe the predators are firmly aware that it's impala lambing season. Smells in the air, the scents, they'll taste their environment, all these chemicals, and they'll know immediately, aha, lambing season is upon us. And it really is a feast for the predators, which is rather sad. But I don't actually know the survival rate. I was at the gym today and I was thinking, what is the survival rate of the impalas? I don't believe these statistics have ever been measured. But I think I would guess for an area like the Sabi Sands, where we are now, we're in the northern sector of the Sabi Sands, which is on the western fringes of the Kruger National Park, or the Greater Kruger, I would say it's probably about 50%. 50 survive, 50 don't make it due to predators. But I don't actually know. It will differ between the areas, and we have a really high density of leopards here. All moving, all navigating, all weaving their way, avoiding one another. And I would guess 50% survive and 50 don't make it, but I don't actually know. That's what I think about when I'm at the gym. Yes, Lauren's brain. So I think we need to reposition the vehicle just marginally, as Anseli here is taking up all of the shade.
Welcome back to Tswalu Kalahari. Just a quick surrounding check for us. Just want to show you something, guys, here. On the one side of the Kalahari, we've got the thunder storm coming up and brewing. And on the one side, we got sunshine. It actually looks like two countries in one. And if you actually listen to the background on the shiny part, or on this side where the sun is still going, you can actually hear cicadas, or cicadas as some refer to them. And obviously with the heat and so on, these guys will keep making these high-pitched sound. It's almost like a little bark, or like a cricket almost, if I can give a reference to how they look like. And they create the sound by actually vibrating two little cartilages under their body. And when they vibrate this cartilages where the wings attach to the body, they've got this big hollow part, and that's what makes or amplifies the sound. But just listen to that. It's just a very loud, high-pitched sound. And also you get the doves in the background. But I'm going to keep quiet a little bit here and just listen to them.
Just look at that.
Slowly stations have been down.
Isn't that absolutely magnificent?
Female leopard on the
Sorry.
Fairville Road.
Isn't that just fantastic? There's Mum calling. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Just behind. So cute. So, yeah, I mean, having looked at all of Lauren's pictures, having looked at the apps and that sort of thing, I think I definitely overestimated its age the first time we found it on its own, but that's because it was on its own. And I think it was well over. I think it was definitely older than sort of 4 or 5 days when we found it, but I don't know, maybe closer to a week. And now it must be close to 14, surely. So cute. Its face planted down onto the ground to have a bit of an afternoon sleep. Maybe that's what its mother was saying. And she went, ooh, ooh. She was saying, go to sleep. Oh, making a little noise. Did you hear that? Oh. Megan, I see you've decided that this is a girl. So you say she looks so angry. Yes, she does. She does look angry. All owls look angry. I've never seen an owl that doesn't look in some state of deep displeasure with life. I suppose we thought Sebwick was a boy, so it's fair enough that we think this one's a girl, eh? Little yawn. Yes, Safari Lover, she is gorgeous. In a cute way. I don't think she has quite the gorgeousness of her parents, who are magnificent. I think describing her in its current state as magnificent would be, well, I think not the right compliment for a young owlet. Or owling. Owlet, I mean, you get adult owlets. I think she's much more cute. Oh, it's so precious watching these things. I wonder if that little hiss means that she's hungry. Can't believe that it grows so fast, can you? Oh, yeah, we're doing a bit of moving around and giving us a bit of a moon. It won't be too long. No, it wasn't a moon, sorry. I got the wrong bit of anatomy there. It won't be too long before she starts moving around and out of the nest. I suppose you can see the new feathers coming through now already. You can see, especially on the wing there, on the left wing, you can see some dark grey feathers. And that is part of the adult feathering. Those are the first adult wing feathers. It's still a totally defenseless animal, that, though. I mean, it has no mechanism of running, flying. I suppose it could bite and claw, but I'm not sure how sharp its little claws are. Her little claws are. No, I don't think so, Karen. Sebwig didn't live up there. It was on the same bank, but I don't think it was in this particular bowl. I never saw Sebwig in that bowl. But Sebwig was around about... No, he's probably slightly younger than this when I first met him. And he was lower down, and he often used to be in and around some vegetation. I mean, I suppose this guy's got a bit of overhang and a bit of vegetation. This girl. Ultimate look of distaste. FH, I suspect that she eats at least once a day. Perhaps some of our more clued up animal rehabbers can tell us, but I would suspect that Mum and Dad come and feed her on a daily basis, if not more than once an evening. Bit of a yawn, shame. Oh, no, a vom. Okay, so that's a little owl pellet coming up. Now that means, let me just look this up. They start to swallow whole prey. We know that from Margie, who's an animal rehab specialist, that the parents feed them until a certain age. They break off bits and give them to them. And then they start to swallow them whole. And that's supposed to be from the age of 21 days they swallow prey whole. I mean, I think we can all agree that it's very unlikely that bird's 21 days old. But if it's vomiting up little pieces like that, I suppose the parents might give it small pieces. They don't necessarily refine the food. So it's probably just vomiting up a bone or two that it's eaten or been fed. The beginnings of an owl pellet, perhaps. All right, we'll carry on from this little owl and head on down towards Chitwa, where there were some wild dogs earlier.
Well, from the updates that I received here, it sounds like Olivia has been putting on quite the performance. Wowza, Olivia, yawning and then vomiting. Not very ladylike. Oh, animals can do the funniest things. Now, going back to Nsele, I don't know if she's nomadic. I really don't know enough about her. I think this is maybe my third sighting with her. She's incredibly relaxed, really, really relaxed. And for those of you who maybe don't know, her name Nsele actually means ruthless, no sympathy. So I think that's really fitting for her appearance. She looks fierce, she looks ruthless. And female leopards, well, essentially they have to be ruthless out here. And there's an article, it's a very well-written article, but it suggests that lions are the most intelligent of all the big cats. And big cats being Panthera, of course, which is your lion, your leopard, your tiger, your jaguar, and your snow leopard. That's your Panthera genus. And they say that lions are the most intelligent because they're social. They're the most social. They live in social dynamics, prides, coalitions, and of course it's all about the group rather than individual. Or is it? That's the question. But anyway, so they're said to sort of be more intelligent. But I have to say, I've had this discussion before. Can we really determine that? Is a life in a pack or a pride or a clan, does that mean you're more intelligent than an organism like this solitary individual who has to constantly look out for herself. She can't rely on anybody. Even when she's got cubs, she can't rely on the cubs. Her job is to protect the cubs. She's got to constantly avoid female leopards, avoid male leopards, mark her territory, avoid lions, avoid hyenas. Yes, girl, we're proud of you. Does that really mean that she's not as intelligent as a more social cat? And I'm only asking, I'm only toying with the idea. I really don't think it's possible to say that. Intelligence is a remarkable topic that I think we're only scratching the surface of. They actually say there's 5 markers of intelligence in animals that are non-human. Social intelligence, there you go. Tool use, future planning, culture, and self-awareness. They're the 5 markers of intelligence. There's so many different examples of it throughout the animal kingdom. And I just think it's not possible to say that a solitary animal is less intelligent than a social animal of the same sort of genus, just because they interact with one another. Leopards do interact with one another more often than we think. I'm not saying that doesn't mean she's not solitary, but just going by the sort of royal lineage that we have, Tandi, Tlalamba, Tingana. Of course, Tingana and Tandi mated and produced Tlalamba. And all 3 of them were seen regularly interacting. Still to this day, Tingana steals from his daughter. He is completely and utterly aware that she is his daughter, or at least he thinks she is. And the dynamics between the 2 of them follow one another. I'm still convinced that Tingana follows her scent sometimes just to steal from her. We see interactions and standoffs between males. See interactions between females. I think leopards interact more than we think they do, but they do live a solitary existence. But tell me, what do you think? Share your thoughts. I just think it's maybe perhaps a little bit easier being in a pride. You can sort of fall asleep and snore and drool, and you know that your pride mates have got your back. There's more eyes, there's more ears, there's more nostrils, there's more power. For a leopard, you're on your own. You have to constantly be aware. No one can fight your battles for you. Jenna, you are right. She is stunning. Absolutely stunning. I love her quirky look. And for being 12 years old, I have to say she's in really good condition. Her ears aren't too tatty. We obviously don't have a very good look at her face anymore, but her teeth are not too worn down. I mean, Tandy is 2 and a bit years older than her, but Tandy's teeth are very worn down. She's in very good condition. Now, we're not repositioning in the sun, I'm afraid. So we'll have to put with these views. She's sleeping about, what, a metre away from that impala? She's sleeping right next to her gill on the ground. She better be careful, there's no hyena in the area. Although who knows where the hyenas are. I'm not bitter or anything, I promise. Although there's a dead lamb there, this is actually a very tranquil scene. So we are going to sit here and enjoy it with Nsele.
Yet another success. I like it when it comes together. we have found these lions. It looks like one of the females or the older females of the southern pride. And just around us, there is a carcass that looked like a wildebeest, and I think there's other two there by it, but we'll try and reposition for that. At the moment, the clear view is on her. Obviously moved a little bit away from it because it's been in the sun, and it has actually started smelling a little bit. So just getting or avoiding all those flies and stuff from the carcass and getting a nice shade where she is there. So avoiding all of that. Nice and cool where she is. But we'll try reposition a little bit later now for that carcass. I just want to see what she actually would be interested in, if she would go back or she's going to keep lying there. Can see she's still wary, looking everywhere every now and then. So we're still not sure if the whole pride had been here to feed, or it's just maybe some of the pride. So that is another interesting part to find out. So let me just try reposition and see what's happening there by the carcass. Have we seen caracal lately at Tswalu? That is a big affirm. I think my last sight of a caracal was about a week ago. And it was just a solitary caracal. So yes, we do get lucky with caracal, African wildcat, and so on. So I'm not saying it's a frequent sight to see them, but yes, we have seen them lately. It does look like this carcass has been pulled right under this big shepherd's tree, but no other lions here. So we'll still look around because when I checked the tracks here, it looked like there's more than one. So they might be scattered around here, or even looking for water. As you would know that after feeding, actually, the blood makes them very, very thirsty. So I'm thinking maybe looking for a puddle of water. It might not be far from where we are, because we've been getting a little bit of rain here and there, and we've got a few puddles around, so they might not have to walk very far. So on that note, while we search the area for others, I'm going to be sending you off to another very beautiful location in Africa.
Welcome back to and Beyond Phinda Private Game Reserve. As you can see, we have actually been successful in finding these cheetah. Ironically enough, right back where they were seen this morning. I think what happened is they actually walked around, found some shade, and have now come back into this open area as it started to cool down. What's quite sweet is if you go zoom right into the faces, you can actually see like a little line on all of their faces of dirt. So you can see all of them have actually had their heads down, resting on the ground at some point. I wonder if there was a little bit of a mound wherever they were, and they managed to rest their faces, getting a little bit those tiny little dirt moustaches. It's the most beautiful lighting at the moment. It's quite a spectacular sighting to see. Always special when you see a mother with cubs. So you have a look at their behavior. You can see how those two sat up and are looking around. It's quite interesting that they've already learned from their mother as to how to keep aware, and they are actively helping and keeping an eye out for predators. You can see that they want to start to get moving. They've already moved once while we've been here. And I'm hoping that they might move a little bit more. You know, if we have a look at their bellies, they don't look incredibly hungry. Look at that one moving off to the right. He's just sitting down now. But I don't see, any hip bones sticking out. It doesn't look incredibly sunken in by the back legs. So perhaps they're not quite ready to hunt yet. Cheetah, as we've discussed a few times, aren't opportunistic hunters like lion or leopard. They really do take their time to try and figure out if it's a good hunting opportunity. And especially a mother like this will really sort of wait for the opportune moment. And it's been quite interesting. We've developed a little database for our reserve where we put in all our sightings for the day, and that way we can see the general pattern or trend of movements of different animals, and it's been really interesting to look at. And in fact, especially what we've noticed is with females with cubs is that there'll be large groupings of sightings once they've had a kill, because she will stay sort of in an open area after they finish the carcass, and they won't move really much for the next few days until they're hungry again. It's been really interesting, and it just shows how incredibly cautious a female like this with her cubs is in terms of trying to make sure that they keep them safe. And as you can see, she's found a really nice open area now, where she's quite happy to sit and wait and keep an eye out for other predators. Now, if we're looking at these two cubs, you can see that there's a bit of a size difference. The one on the right looks a little bit smaller. Than the one on the left. And these are a male and female pair. So that one on the right will be the female. You can see that there's a bit of a size difference, so he's already growing a little bit bigger. And eventually what's going to happen is when they reach 17 to 18 months, the mother's going to make a kill, and while they're feeding on the carcass, she's going to actually leave them, and then they're going to be on their own. And for a few months, they're going to stick together. But eventually that female, she's going to be driven to actually find a mate. So she's going to be the one to leave her brother. And it's going to be quite sad because you'll see him walking around calling for her for a few days after that, and eventually he'll be off by himself as well. So Zay, the father of these cheetah cubs doesn't actually play an active role in raising them. They'll follow the female around once she's an estrus and mate with her for a few days, and then they'll leave her alone, and then they're off by themselves. So watch this. You see that cheetah cub at the back? Oh, I thought it was actually stalking. There's a whole lot of little birds flying around in the grass. I thought she was going to stalk one of those birds. She might actually just be using the grass as a bit of camouflage. She's gotten quite close. They still are landing right in front of her. She doesn't seem too interested. You can see her body language change now. She did have that stalking pose. You can see her staying low to the ground and her shoulders rolling around. Her focus isn't completely on the birds. She seems to sort of be getting comfortable now. Unless she's deciding to wait it out and have them fly towards her rather, which I don't think is a incredibly smart game. Beautiful to see. You might see a little bit of playfulness between the brother and the sister now. It's always wonderful to watch young animals because they've got so much energy. They never seem to just lie down. Look at this. Oh, sweet. So affectionate between the brother and sister. It's lovely to see. So I think we're going to stay here for a while. I do see that they're moving a little bit at the moment. So I think what they might do is they might spend a bit of time scanning this area. And we'll see what the mother decides to do. Whether she decides to stay here another night, she might get up and go. We'll stick around and find out for ourselves. We're going to send you to another live location right now.
And Sally just heard something. I think it was impala. She can hear some impala. So I think we should just sit here together and listen to the sounds of the bush.
So we're just sharing a peaceful moment with a herd of elephants that's slowly feeding into the sunset towards us on all this fresh green growth the rain has provided for them. As you can see, using their feet to kick the plants off of the roots, then shaking them off to get rid of the dirt, and then straight to the next one whilst they feed. It's a lovely herd. This is a female that's right in front of us. She's a rather large female. She's quite recognizable because of those offset tusks that she has and a very angular forehead. I'm sure you can see that. She's got an incredibly angled forehead. It's flat on the front and flat on top, which makes this nice angle. The male elephants generally, once they get large enough, will have a very rounded forehead. So that's how she's quite recognizable. She's walking towards the vehicle, so we just have to stay very still and very quiet. There's a few youngsters also in this group, so you can see they're moving through here, but they are very, very good sensors, so they can almost certainly, well, definitely hear us, maybe smell us. The sun is in their eyes, though, so it's not so easy for them to see right now. But look at that. Even though they can't see, they're able to find food very easily. It's amazing to watch them use their feet like that to just kick up the little herbs. This elephant's just basically picking all the herbs from amongst the grass and is eating those. So it's quite a common thing. Often it's been told that you can use elephant dung. If you can burn a piece of like wet or at least not completely dry elephant dung on a fire, it smolders and creates smoke that's often quite fragrant, and it's usually really good at keeping away things like mosquitoes, which of course can spread malaria. So this elephant's going to have the most fragrant of all the dungs. And you can see the young elephant there just following probably the mother. This might be the mother. And you can often see that the young elephants will feed on the exact same clumps of vegetation that the mother feeds on. That's all part of the learning process. There's even a big bull that's joined this herd, and he's feeding just down on the road over here. See, he's quite a lot larger. Now you can see the forehead of this bull is rounded. See that compared to the female that we had before? This male has got a nice rounded forehead. And that's because the males often push and shove each other, especially when they're fighting. So they've got a lot more bone on the top of their head and the front of their head to act as a protection when they're using their massive weight to push over trees and fight with each other. You can see this one's not using its foot. It's actually using its tusk as a tool, bending the branches over its tusk, snapping them, and then stuffing them into its mouth. And this is a sickle bush that it's feeding on right now, and the sickle bush has got lots of spines on it, so you can see how gently it grabs the base of the sickle bush, then it pulls its trunk along and flattens all the spines, and then is able to eat it without hurting itself. So watch this, it's going to grab and then pull outwards to try and squash any of those spines. And using the tusk just to snap that. It's always so nice to spend time with elephants. There's the mother and the females are just pulling up next to us now, feeding on the green vegetation, the grass that's sheltered by this knobthorn. Oh, my head's in the way. Sorry there, BK. So maybe there's not the best ones to try and look at, but you can see the elephants are very close. Oh, look at this little one over here. See him over there? He's just giving us a bit of a head shake. And there's lots more elephants. There's another young bull that's coming just behind us over here. So all of these bulls are not really part of this herd. They follow the herd and they stay close to the females in the hopes that they can maybe mate with them at some point. But this is quite a young bull. He's quite tall, but he's not very big. And so he's not yet going to be a challenge for the dominance of any of these females to mate with them. That other bull is quite a bit larger. You see, we're sitting here so quietly and they're all just moving straight past us without really a care in the world. That one little one sort of opened his ears and did a bit of a head shake. I think it's because I spoke a bit louder and I sort of moved my hand a bit. But the other elephants were so calm. They knew exactly what was going on, and they've got extreme confidence in the fact that the whole family is here. So they are covered. Oh, see that? The young bull just got chased a little bit by the slightly bigger bull. So you can imagine now, if there were two large bulls and neither wanted to back down, how aggressive these fights can be. And I've seen a few of them. Nothing so bad that anything got injured, but definitely enough to be in awe. Megan, it is amazing to watch them use that trunk. I mean, when you think of that trunk, Megan, it's like, if we have an arm, right, I think, I don't know how many individual muscles are in a human arm, but let's say it's X amount. But elephants have, I think, over 50,000 individual muscle fibers in that trunk, which is what makes it just so flexible and so maneuverable. Now, I mean, we can't see the tip of the trunk on this particular one, but right now it's even got the septum right at the edge of the trunk is so sensitive that it can pluck single leaves off of the knobthorn that you can see behind there. I mean, it's really amazing. In fact, this elephant, so not only is it amazing with its muscle, but also with the scent capabilities. It can smell the most minor scents clearly. So you can see this elephant is almost universally plucking all the same herbs. Every single time it's feeding, it seems to be pulling up the same herbs. Now, cravings are based on actual needs. So this herb probably has a type of vitamin or mineral in abundance that this elephant really wants in its diet. And you can see they're covered in mud. So some of the other vitamins and minerals that it needs, it will get from the muddy water that it bathes in and drinks. But this is just a nice supplement. Megan, I can watch these trunks for hours. As long as they're not pulling up the pipes in our eco-training camp. Then it's less fun to watch. Still interesting though. So this elephant here, she might be the matriarch. I don't know, she's not a very big elephant, but I haven't seen a bigger female. And the fact that she's sort of stayed close to us the whole time is sometimes an indication. Oh, there's a tiny baby. BK, look at that one. There's a little tiny baby following behind. No tusks erupting, so it's under 3 years old. I'd say this elephant, probably not much older than about 1. Oh, that's so cute to see. You can see more elephants in the back as well. This is a big group. I don't know, maybe 30 elephants in and around this area that have just moved past. Oh, sweet man. See, this one has got quite good control of its trunk, but it will still struggle to control it perfectly. They develop much the same speed as human babies do. So, I'm saying that now, but now I don't know the specifics of it, but I don't have a child myself. But how long does it take a child to learn to walk properly or use its hands properly to grip things? I'm sure it takes quite a long time, maybe a year or 2, before babies can really do lots of stuff with their body. It's the same with elephants. It'll take a couple of years before the elephant has perfect control of its trunk and is able to pick things up and pluck things. Of course, mostly they'll just be drinking milk. So look at this young elephant, also very small, but it's got tiny little bits of tusk that you can see just emerging from the side of its trunk. Now, as a general rule, we say that an elephant about 3 years old will start to have these tusks emerging. It's a rule of thumb. It can be earlier, it can be later. Some never grow tusks, ever. But it's a nice indicator. So this is a slightly old elephant. So they're starting to lose their direction a bit, these elephants. It seems like maybe they've been on the move quite a while, and now especially the young ones are getting a bit bored. And they're starting to just move back and forth. And this is the youngster that's hanging around with that mother that we keep seeing eating the herbs, and it is also eating the herbs now. Do you see that? So it's really following exactly what the mother is doing. You can hear their hornbills calling. Well, they're about to all move beyond the bushes now. We're going to lose visual of them. But what an amazing moment to spend with a group of elephants. It's really nice to see them and be able to spend time with them like that, especially when they come so close to the car. It's really like they're allowing us to be in their world for a moment. From here, probably going to head back down to Leopard Dam, where maybe, now that it's getting warmer, we're going to get... Oh, there's another elephant coming from behind us. Maybe head down to Leopard Dam, where we might find more elephants starting to come down to drink.
Here we have got a wild dog. Now, they were found around here this morning. They seem to have moved around a bit during the course of the day. This one I found on foot, and it didn't see me, which was fantastic, because if it had seen me, it would have run very deeply into this, well, impenetrable bush, and that probably would have been the end of that. But I cannot tell you where the rest of the the rest of the pack is. I thought I saw 2 dogs when I walked in here, but so far all we can see is that one. And it's lying in a very pleasant little glade, but it is kind of looking around, seemingly anxiously. Anyway, I think we'll spend some time here, because it'll get up and start moving sometime soon. We're very close to Tswalu Dam, where there is an abundance of potential prey. Now, where are you going? Just watch it carefully. I think this thing's become separated from the rest, you know. Right, we're going to have to move quickly, otherwise we're going to lose it, and that'll be the end of that. get up there, Niels. Whether we'll get out or not, I don't know.
I hope James is able to identify that pack. I have a funny feeling it's the Pungwe pack that James is with on Chitwa. But I only saw one adult and one pup today. Now, thanks to James Richards, you actually let us know that the pack that I had on Buffelshoek yesterday was the dispersal pack, so almost a breakaway pack from the Orpin pack. I've never met them before. It was my first time seeing them. And I think they've been seen all over, but they're believed to have been denning in the Mangaletti. So that's why we were able to see them at the northern side of Buffelshoek. So it's a dispersal pack from the Orpin pack, just in case any of you were interested, and thanks to James Richard for that. Now she has literally just crunched through an entire leg. It wasn't the most pleasant thing to listen to. She'll be finished this by tonight. She's moving it into the shade, I think. Julie, you are asking about the lifespan of a leopard. Now, generally with a lot of mammals, at least, especially your predators, the females will outlive the males. And why is that? Well, males are notorious, especially lions and leopards, for fighting one another, engaging in battle, just generally being testosterone fueled. So it's normally the... Excuse me, I've been sneezing here. It's normally the females that outlive the males, and the general lifespan is anywhere between 12 to 15 years. But if you look at Tingana and you look at Tandy, they're 14 already. And of course we don't know what's going to happen, but they're both thriving, I can assure you. When we say a leopard is losing condition, that's completely incorrect. As soon as they lose condition, they'll die. So both Tandy and Tingana, yes, they're older, but they're in fantastic condition. So going back to your question, Julie, anywhere between 12 to 15 normally for the wild. I'm not talking about captivity, but the maximum known, I believe, is around 18 years. It will all depend on many factors: resources, competitors, environment, habitat. But that's the average statistics. Now, I had a quote laid out for you all, just going back to that intelligence topic. It's a quote that I regularly read, and it's from Heisenberg in 1958. And it's, what we observe is not nature in itself, but nature exposed to our method of questioning. Isn't that a fabulous quote? So when we're trying to find out, going back to the sort of social cats versus solitary cats intelligence, when we're trying to find out what mental level other species operate at, the challenge comes from us. Because our attitudes, our creativity, our imagination is all part of the story. We love to compare and contrast animals. We love it. Sometimes we forget that we are also a mammal. And the human intelligence, we sort of use that as the touchstone. We use that as the anchor point. And that shouldn't be the case. And there's a perfect example. I know I bring this up a lot, but it's a German word, and it's called Umwelt. And it basically came from a scientist who uses this word to describe an animal's point of view, almost. I think it means surrounding world. And his theory is that each organism will perceive their environment in a completely different way, even if it's the same environment. So I'm sitting watching Nsele eating this lamb, but I'm going to have a completely different perception of this moment to maybe you watching at home. But we're watching the same thing, give or take. And the example he used, I love this one, is the eyeless tick. So there's a tick, an arachnid that doesn't have any eyes, and basically they climb onto a stem of grass and they wait for a really, really special smell, the butyric acid. Yes, that comes from mammals. And when they smell that, they then quest and they jump onto the mammal for food. They can wait 18 years to do this. 18 years without having food and not being able to see. So as soon as they get a sort of whiff of a mammal, they'll obviously jump on and gorge themselves on her blood. So once she's full of blood, she'll then be ready to lay her eggs and die. So can we as humans honestly understand this tick? Most likely not. The tick's life seems, well, incredibly impoverished to ours, but maybe its simplicity is its strength. Maybe this tick has a wonderful life. So my point is, it's very, very difficult to compare intelligence, especially when it comes to cats. Oh, she's almost finished, so we are going to sit here and watch Nsele finish her dinner.
I don't know, I think it's quite fun to compare intelligences and the different kinds of intelligences, especially as we become more and more aware of what animals can and can't think about. Anyway, I don't know what this wild dog's thinking. Well, I do actually. I think he's thinking, where is the rest of the pack? Now, I believe this morning there was just a female and a pup. He's obviously become separated as well. It is a he because he stood up, and I know that for sure. And he's come out of the drainage line, and he's now lying right next to Charles' house. Charles is the owner of Chitwa, and so if you do hear a little pump, it's because that's what it is. And I suspect that he will go and look for the rest of the pack in a little while. I did hear him call once, and that's as we were moving into the sighting. He went whoop, whoop, twice, or once or twice. Anyway, he's a very good-looking fellow, this. I don't know if he's the alpha. I don't think he is. I can't remember him being the alpha. And he's definitely had a fat meal. So sometime this morning he either caught something and ate it himself, or he ate something with a couple of others and became separated from them and has spent the day on his own. Now, I don't know if any of you remember, but there was a little while back that we had a dog on its own, and it was a heart-rending thing because it had lost the pack. And for about 3 or 4 days, we had it walking between here and the Juma Dam, and it was calling and shouting this sort of mournful hoot. And then eventually it found the rest of the pack, so it had a happy ending. But, it's not like he's bound to find the pack today. It would take a couple of days. And every time a Franklin alarm calls, he lifts his head. And I don't think it's because he thinks there's a predator coming. I think it's because he thinks maybe the rest of his pack is around. There were definitely more of them around the area because I can smell strong dog all over the place here. And it can't just be him who's left his scent everywhere. But at least he's awake. I suspect at some stage he'll head off towards the dam and have a look around the clearings there. Leighton, wild dogs are so endangered because they are persecuted by human beings, first of all. Initially, and until relatively recently, I think as late as the 60s, wild dogs were shot as vermin for some reason I find extremely difficult to fathom, human beings thought of them as savage, murderous killers as opposed to predators of an ecosystem. They decided that the way they killed animals was cruel, and therefore they were vermin and they should be shot. And they obviously came into conflict with farmers. I mean, you can imagine what a tasty treat a sheep or a goat or a beef calf, even a beef cow would be to a pack of hungry wild dogs. Anyway, that was one problem. And then the other problem is that they range hugely widely, and they seldom notice or pay any attention to fences. And so the fences around the Kruger, while they do provide some sort of barrier, it's not a particularly good barrier to these things. And so they cross out of the reserves relatively frequently, and they come into contact with domestic dogs. And although I doubt there's ever much of a physical interaction, they do get domestic dog diseases like rabies and distemper particularly, and that can run through a pack and wipe it out in a matter of weeks. So, yeah, and I'm not sure that their numbers are making much of a recovery. I remember when I started guiding some 2 decades ago, there was a game count that said, I think there were 450 dogs in the Kruger, and I think that's down to 350 now, and I don't think it's moved much, So, although there are a lot of people doing a lot of good work in the Kruger area, it hasn't increased much, but that might be a carrying capacity problem. They've certainly managed to get a lot of these dogs into private reserves where they thrive, and they manage populations in private reserves quite well now, which they certainly didn't 20 years ago.
So as you can see, the cheetah have decided to actually stay right out in this open area. Probably a very smart move on the mother's part. As we said, she's very cautious with these 2 youngsters. She's only really going to go and get moving when she decides that they're hungry enough to warrant it. And I think right now, it's still good for maybe another day. Perhaps tomorrow morning she's going to get going. She is one of 3 of our females who currently have cubs. So these 2, if you have a look at the back of the neck, you can see that they've got quite long hair. And it's still very fluffy around that, but the rest of their bodies, their hair has actually become quite short, just like the mothers. And they were born in March this year, so they are just approaching 8 months now. And amazing, so they're almost halfway to the point where they're going to be independent. So she's done a fantastic job of keeping them alive and well up to this stage. And see that they're just enjoying the sunlight at the moment. And we're going to sit and enjoy it with them.
And Sally has almost finished her little lamb here. Demolished it, in fact. It's starting to cool down here. There's a lovely breeze coming through, which we're all relishing. Well, maybe not the lamb, but everybody else is. And going back to that umwell, if anyone is interested, it's a fantastic topic, and it's by Well, I guess the English name would be Jacob, but I think in German it would probably be Jakob von Uexküll. Such an interesting topic. I love reading into it. If you just type it into Google, you'll be able to really try to dig into how one single environment can offer hundreds, if not thousands, of different realities to different organisms. I'm not talking about an ecological niche. No. Talking about an own world. It's completely different. It's not the habitat containing resources for the needs of an organism. No, it's about their perception. If you think about it, if you use the example of a tree, you'll have some birds that sit on the branches. You'll have some insects that live on the tree. You'll have insects that bury into the tree. You'll have maybe some mammals that use the roots to rest. You have all sorts of organisms, and each single one will perceive that tree completely differently, yet it's the same tree. Where's she going? She cannot be finished that already. Excuse the back of our car. She's obviously walked right to the back. I think Madame here may be finished. She caught it this morning, so that does tell you that it only takes about a day for a hungry leopard to finish a baby impala. So hopefully she's just going to go behind this thicket and rest.
Now, some information on our hound over here. This animal is not from the Pungwe pack. Thank you, James Richard, as always. It is a dog that was in the Sands pack before, but we later saw him with this. I'm reading directly from James Richard's tweet here. But we later saw him with 4 members, one of which was a very pregnant female late in the season. Yeah, I remember that pack, and I had no idea that he was part of that pack. So that's very interesting. Not part of the Pungwe pack. Not part of the Pungwe pack. The pack of 4 dend on Mala Mala, and it has some Sands and at least 1 Orphan member, and I don't believe they have a name. Thank you, James. Again. And this den site comes from very late in the season. James has got a picture here from the 27th of August, which is late for tiny puppies to be at a den. Anyway, chum, maybe you've decided to leave your pack for good, but I doubt it, because there were at least 2 animals here this morning, and as late as 11 o'clock this morning there were 2 animals here. So I think our best bet is to just wait with him and see when he starts to move. I'm sure it won't be too long from now. He certainly has not struggled to find a meal today, that is for sure. No, Ferdinand, they don't really. They kind of establish it with semi-non-violent means. If you think of a school playground, and think of, say, pre-teens or even teenagers on a school playground or in a canteen or wherever it is, there's a hierarchy that develops, right? doesn't necessarily get enforced with violence. Sometimes it does, but it's often not established with violence. It's just kind of happens. People fall into certain roles. Some people are natural leaders, some people are not. Those roles are fluid in some cases, but it just kind of establishes itself. And yes, sometimes there is violence and sometimes there isn't. A little bit like that with the wild dog pack. You can see from very early on, when they're playing as puppies, that a hierarchy is developing. You can see that some are just, when they're playing, some are more dominant than others. And I think that sort of role that is established, or that place in the hierarchy which is established so early on, lasts then into later life. Now, when they disperse, they normally disperse as single-sex groups. So the males from a cohort will go off on their own, and the females from a cohort will go off on their own, and they'll have a pecking order. But of course, when they join a pack, let's say 4 females from one pack join up with 4 females from another pack, there's an alpha pair, so the most dominant in each male and female group will become the alpha pair. And it's not like
Oh, I don't know what happened to Mr. Hendry. But Anseli has just came here to groom herself. She's very alert. I think with an Impala lamb, it's easy to just not hoist. They're small, but there's a risk involved in that. Big risk. A hyena could come at any moment, or another leopard. And I'm not convinced a lamb could really satisfy leopards. I think it's more of a snack, really, I do. Fiona, you're asking what is the use of their whiskers? Whiskers are sensory sort of organs, if you like, or tools. And, oh, she's on the move. And because leopards are primarily nocturnal, oh no, she's not on the move. Lovely. They navigate their landscape at night time. Sorry, she's got a funny tummy. Oh dear. And although their eyes are very specialized, highly, highly specialized for life in the dark because of their nocturnal way of life, although, of course, Anseli's awake right now and she's eating and she's active during the day, primarily, generally speaking, they are nocturnal. So because they move about in the dark, the whiskers add a sort of extra dimension to their sensory world. And it actually goes back to the umveld, believe it or not, that they can sort of get through tight spaces. Their whiskers are long, they extend well past their face, and they can gauge where to go and where not to go when navigating in the dark. Now, although they have that tapetum lucidum layer that reflects light twice back onto the eye so that they can see better at night time, the whiskers just add that sort of extra dimension. I'm not sure if we can follow her just yet because our signal's not great, but just imagine I had whiskers sticking out here, extending past my face. If I'm trying to get through a really narrow gap, be it vegetation, be it some sort of urban habitat, I'm going to be able to sense if I can get through that without risking injury or getting stuck. So that's exactly why whiskers are there. Okay, we'll try and move, but the signal is not the most stable where we are right now. Very, very far east in Torchwood, and we're going to do our very best to try and follow her.
As you can see, these cheetah have stayed exactly where they were last. What's quite sweet to see is if you have a look off to the right, there's one that's lying flat down in the grass. Oh, just look at those eyes. One just turned around and gave us a beautiful, beautiful look. And if you see, it's just rolled over. Actually, I've lost track of which one is the female and the male. I think this might be the male in front, but I'm not entirely sure. So now the reason he's just rolled over is if you have a look at the wind direction, it's now coming from behind them. So he's taken that into account very cleverly. And he's now scanning the area in front, knowing that anything coming from behind, the scent will blow onto them completely. And he's got sort of a 360-degree awareness that way. And it's lovely to see the mother's able to take a break. You can see that her head is down now. She's catching some well-deserved sleep. She's not going to be down for very long. The one cub off to the right has literally been sleeping for the last 10 or so minutes. I haven't even seen her pick her head up at all and share in the scanning duties. So hopefully she learns in the next 10 months how to be a bit more alert, because it will be very important when she's on her own one day. But for right now, she's letting her brother sort of take the lead in terms of safety. I always love looking at a cheetah. Yeah, you can see. Actually, now that I'm looking at them, I think it is the female in front and the brother at the back. Just comparing their head sizes now, it looks like this one closest to us is a little bit smaller, so that would be the female. Amazing how quickly that mother and the male at the back there raised their head, and that was just for a little bird call. And so they are quite sleepy. They're actually making me yawn. Alicia, they do indeed. And what's quite a funny story is we actually found a hairball that was regurgitated by a lion when we were walking up to the lodge one day. A poor receptionist was on her way to reception, and she came across a male and female lion lying right in our parking lot. She got quite a fright, but luckily she reacted exactly as you expect. And when we went to look later, we actually found a hairball. Now, it can be from a few things. The cats themselves, as you can see right now, look at that cheetah in front. It's busy grooming itself. And they've got very rough tongues. So that will actually pull a few hairs out as they're cleaning, which is part of the grooming process, just like we lose old hair, so will cats. But also from when they feed on carcasses, there's a bit of the fur that they actually lose just by sort of licking the skin around it, and that takes off quite a bit of fur. It's almost like the tongue is almost the same texture as sandpaper, so it's incredibly rough, and it can lick skin clean right down to where you can actually get through to the bloody underlayer. So it can be a combination of those that will sort of create a hairball, and they can regurgitate that. In fact, you see it fairly often. So that was a really good question. In fact, a lot of the behavior that you see of wildcats, you'll be able to sort of link to your domestic cats. Even positions such as this, if you watch how they lie, right in the sun. You can imagine your domestic cats at home right now, starting to get a little bit more cool. It's a bit of a wind chill, and they might actually find a nice sunny spot outside and go and lie and bathe in the sun there. And also, I'm sure you'll notice with your domestic cats, if you drop something, then they'll very quickly lift their head and look at you. They don't seem to even sort of relax completely, even though they don't have many threats, those domestic cats. So it's quite interesting to link the two behaviors. It's nice to see the male on the right is now taking a a longer turn at sort of keeping alert again. Standing upright and scanning around. And what I want to draw your attention to now is how all of their heads are facing completely different directions. You see the mothers off to the left, the brothers off to the right, and the young females actually facing towards that thicket at the back. So that is how they keep incredibly safe. They're always looking in opposite directions. And that way they're able to see a predator or any sort of threat much quicker. And that's the ultimate way to keep themselves safe. It's all about timing with cheetah. They need to be able to see a predator before it's too close, because they are very capable of outrunning them. But we've discussed it before and how they really aren't capable of defending themselves. They've got to use their speed as their weapon. So look at her head, very small. If you compare it even to that leopard you were just looking at, it's a much smaller head, like her jaw is very, very tiny. Her limbs are long and slender. In fact, the bones are much, much more brittle and can fracture very, very easily. So in a fight, in one-to-one combat, she's not going to do very well. She'll have to use her speed to get away. Yeah, she is. Sinak. I'm just trying to think what my favorite thing about cheetahs are. And you know what? I think it's the fact that they survive against all odds. I just think that the odds are so stacked against them. I mean, look at this female. She has to be constantly alert. You can imagine how exhausting that is. She doesn't really get a break. Lions, you'll see them lying down and they're sleeping, and they've got a whole pride to help make kills. She's on her own. She's got these 2 cubs, but they're not an age that they can actually help her hunt. She's got to keep them safe. She's got to keep alert the entire time. She can't climb a tree to keep herself safe or hidden. So they really are sort of the underdog. And I just think it's completely breathtaking when you see a sight like this. You've got this female who has survived to adulthood. She's now, raising. This isn't even her first set of cubs. I think this might be her second. And she's already raised them to 8 months old, which is such a feat in itself. And I think that is what I enjoy most about cheetah. It was a really lovely question, though. They also are just the most beautiful animals. That sunlight, and their eyes are just so, that sort of amber color is just so absolutely gorgeous. If you have a look at the one turning around to us now, it's going to be really stunning. We can hear a black-bellied bustard just call off in the distance there. So we are going to sit here and see if they get up to anything else for this evening, and we're going to send you over to another live location.
Talking of hairballs, there's actually a scientific name for a hairball, believe it or not, and it refers to any hair mass that's trapped in the sort of gastrointestinal system in any organism, and it's obviously formed by the ingestion of hair in whichever way, shape or form, whether it's from grooming or eating, and it's trichobezoar. Trichobezoar. Trichobezoar is the scientific name for a hairball. Yes, that is my fact of the day. Now it's getting much cooler. I know I've already mentioned that, but it's just the relief that I feel. I can only imagine the relief that Nsele feels. And that's me trying to tap into Nsele's belt. Very poorly so. But we will be leaving her shortly, as there's many other vehicles waiting to come in and see her. And I think she's completely done with that impala. And I'm sure tonight she will probably go for another one. Her fur on the underside is really, really white. It's quite astonishing how white she is. Almost looks like a Dalmatian lying there. But it's really wonderful to have her around, although the sort of northern sector is bursting at the seams with female leopardesses. She's somehow fitting in. And I don't know how. Is she finding a space, or is she just doing exactly what Tingana appears to be doing? Weaving in and out of others' territory. Knowing from that sort of outer fence, if you like, where everyone else is residing, but still penetrating anywhere, ignoring that warning, taking the risk, and just moving silently. Not leaving your scent. Of course they will need to urinate and defecate, of course, that's natural, but not intentionally so. Not leaving your scent on all the vegetation and all the trees and all the areas that you can think of. Just an occasional whittle now and again. I really don't know. For me, there's a big question mark over in Selly, but I think my gut tells me she's nomadic. Crafty Stash, I have not heard your name in so long. Nice to hear it. Yes, I believe Nsele has had cubs. She's 12 years old after all. It'd be slightly worrying if she didn't. And I'm sure she had a litter of 2 in 2014, so that was 6 years ago. And I believe they're both alive. It's in Chilla and Klangala. I'm sure that's how they pronounce it. And then in 2016, I believe she had another litter with 1 female. So she was seen mating with Tingana not so long ago on Buffelshoek. We didn't have Traverse then. So could she be pregnant? Very, very possibly. Is that why she's here? The estrus cycle in cats is very short, but females are known to move extraterritoriality. Let's try that one again, Lauren. They move outside of their own territory into others, purely to mate. It's dangerous, it's risky, but as soon as you come across the male that you're going to mate with, he will protect you. You've just got to get in there silently, get out there silently, and get back to your territory. And female leopards are known to do this often. Is that why she's here? She's been here a long time now. Or does she just love the northern sands? Did something push her out from the west? I really don't know. But this is the area that we're in, is sort of where you find Ikanyeni very often. And she's also found in the same areas as Luna. But Luna's not got a territory yet. So where Nsele fits in, I am yet to find out. But we are going to leave her now, bumble on back to Juma, and see what else we can find.
So we've found a plant which is quite interesting. Now, it's not an indigenous plant. It is an exotic plant, but it's quite commonly found around this area, it seems. Now, for those of you who like to cook, you might recognize the shape of this. It looks a bit like basil, especially the flower heads. This one is very, very velvety and hairy all over it. So this is actually called tulsi or tulsi, and it's Indian in origin, and it's actually considered quite sacred to the Hindu belief. And now it's got a lot of medicinal uses, and it smells very strongly like basil. If you crush these leaves and smell them, it's very, very fragrant, but it's a lot larger than the native basil plants that we find here, the ossimums that we find here. I'm actually not even sure if it's the same genus, but as you can see there, you can see the flowers quite similar, long pod-like, and then lots of velvety leaves. Now, some of the traditional uses of this plant are that you can actually pluck these and eat them to cleanse the blood. It's apparently a good way to start your day, to pluck these and just eat the leaves, but don't chew them, because chewing them apparently releases too much of the chemicals and it can have some other side effects. But it's good for respiratory problems as well. Now, I know that in the Hindu culture, this is quite a sacred plant. It's considered to be the earthly embodiment of Vishnu, I believe. I'm not 100% certain on that, but it's a very interesting plant. So if you're ever driving around and you see a very large basil-like plant that's very velvety and furry, go and pluck a leaf and have a look at it. Make sure it is what you think it is. If it smells like basil, it's probably this one, the holy basil or tulsi.
Welcome back to Tswalu Kalahari. We're getting a bit of action here. This female just got a bit of audio from, it sounds like other lions in the distance, and that's what got her up and mobile, heading to the other female there. Let's see what happens. Definitely they did catch that sound. Gonna try reposition here for the two of them. There we go. So she has been feeding, as you can see there, looking at her mouth, very bloody there, trying to lick it clean. Obviously with the blood, the flies are going to be attracted to that, so that's going to bother her a little bit. You can hear the thunder behind us also rumbling there. Jen, do animals experience hunger the same way we do? I'd probably say yes, and it's survival for them. That's one thing that really drives them to actually, especially with predators, to continue with their life and drive them to actually hunt and learn the skill of hunting. Otherwise, they would starve to death. With herbivores, it's pretty much not as bad with us, or as with us, because if you look at vegetation, there's vegetation everywhere and they can get food in abundance. But for things like predators, it must be a bit of a challenge for them, because they need to hunt what they eat. And that's why at times some predators would readily scavenge, is obviously where result is higher than effort. And any animal would go for a situation like that, where they would use the least energy to get the most out of that energy spent. So yes, they would definitely be affected by hunger in proportion to what we experience. Let's see what this female is up to. She might be heading also towards the carcass. For a bit of a feed there. Actually, Nick, the most predominant bird you can hear in the background is a Cape turtle dove. So it's a more grayish dove with a ring on its back, or a black ring across its back or neck. And that's what you predominantly hear in the African bush. Looks like she's going around those bushes, trying to sneak in from where we're not seeing her. The carcass is under this big shepherd's tree, so that's where she's entering. Let's see if she does come across. Yep. She's gone right through, and there she is with the carcass. As expected, starting to feed. And the reason they would put a carcass like that under a tree is to hide it from other birds and other predators like your jackals. Question, how long do lions live in the wild? Now, you're looking at an average of about 14 years. Obviously, there's a few things that would affect them with how long they would survive. Things like the terrain. What is the terrain giving them? Is it easy terrain to acquire food? Mating opportunities, fighting is another big one. Injuries while they hunt is another big one. So all those put together would definitely either make them live a little bit longer or a little bit shorter, just based on that. So different areas would have a different average, but I would give you a round number and say the average would be about 14 years for wild lions. But in captivity, there are records up to about 21 years in captivity. So obviously in captivity, they wouldn't be fighting as much. They are fed, so they don't spend time getting injuries when they hunt and so on. And even at times getting medication, which in the wild they wouldn't be getting. So all of those put together would give you the differences between why in captivity they would live longer and in the wild living such a life. I wouldn't say a short life, but 14 years would be about right. So you can see she's licking a little bit before she actually tries eating in there. Lincoln, do female lions roar? Yes, indeed. Female lions would roar. Now, a female's roar is not as loud and as heavy as your male's lion, but if you take the species Panthera, so anything that is under the species or under the umbrella Panthera means it can roar. So your lion, your leopard, they can actually roar. And it's interesting how they come about to roar. It's actually with your lions, if you look at the what we would refer to as a voice box, they don't really have a voice box. They would have two sets of cartilages in the throat that would be loose and hanging. And by pushing air through these cartilages, it creates vibrations. And those vibrations, together with the mouth, or with the emptiness or the hollow of the mouth, would create that roar. So yes, both male and female would roar, and roaring signifies a few things. It could be trying to communicate things like territory, positioning of other animals, and so on. So it becomes a very vital thing for the survival of the species. Let's see what she does. Looks like she's not getting what she wants by the skin there. That's why she was keeping just licking and licking. If you look at their tongues, they've got almost like barbs on the tongues where it should have been taste buds, and those barbs would actually help them scrape a little bit of fur or a little bit of meat, even when they lick like that continuously in one area, and also helping them to be able to get grip and rip off the skin from where they've been licking. They are wildebeest, the most common prey for lions here at Tswalu. It would be one of. So predominantly what you do find our lions here at Tswalu go for is oryx, which is your gemsbok. It's your blue wildebeest, and zebra, both mountain zebra and your plain zebra or your Burchell zebra. So those would be the most common species that lions here at Tswalu would be going for. And it's very simple as to why they are the more bulkier and not as fast. And half the time you find prides, the southern pride, the northern pride, sometimes even splitting. So in most cases you've got at least an average of 4 mouths to feed. So that becomes quite a sufficient amount of meat for them to share. And that's why they would prefer going for that size of prey. They could go a little bit smaller, but seldomly do get such. Beautiful eyes there. Get bright yellow eyes. Obviously not a lot of color receptors in those eyes. You get more light receptors, and hence they are a light color like that. But also if you look around the eyes, the shading around the eye is also very light, just to help them draw light when they do hunt. Because remember, these animals would be nocturnal. Look at that. Very alert, looking at the other female that was just feeding before she was feeding. Look at the size of those claws. While we still stick with these lions, I'm going to send you off to another location in Africa.
Welcome back. We've actually decided to leave the cheetah for the time being. They seem pretty content to stay out in that open airstrip. We've come to another one of our open areas in the south of our reserve, and we've just come across the scene that really took our breath away. It's one of those moments, as the sun starts to go down, as everything starts to settle down for the evening, and you just get this beautiful sort of golden light hovering over these plains. And you can see a whole lot of activity hanging around here. And see, there's a beautiful herd of impala. It's quite interesting to see that none of them had their lambs yet. And then, of course, in the foreground, we've got this really majestic male Inyala. He is certainly not here by accident. He's come to spend the evening as close to these impala as he can, just to just keep him a little bit more safe. You can imagine, being out at night can be really daunting for these animals. A whole lot of predators walking around. So some extra eyes and ears never hurt anyone. And of course, there's the added benefit that if there is a predator stalking them, it might actually decide to go for one of the impala rather than himself. So that's why he's hanging around this group here. And what you can see, it's quite interesting now. Nyala actually predominantly browses, but as I'm watching, it does seem to be feeding on these little plants right in the foreground. I think they are sort of more weeds and small little shrubs. If you see, it's quite different to the grass that the impala are feeding at the back. I think that's where they're a little bit more separated. He seems to find these a little bit more appetizing than the grass. You can actually see another nyala is coming off to our right, slightly younger. The horns are slightly smaller. It's going to come into the area now as well. I can hear some movement to my right. Wondering what else is walking through these bushes towards this beautiful scene. And actually look at that nyala on the right. Can you see how he's starting to... His hair's actually raised completely upright, that white hair. And he's doing, or he did that on purpose. It's starting to relax a little bit now. But I think he was actually going to try and sort of display with this other male and try and have a bit of a contest. It's called a lateral display, where they determine the alpha male within a group by slowly walking around in a very small circle and trying to out-intimidate the other male. And they do that by being as big as and impressive as possible. And one of the ways they do that is raise their hair on the back of their backs there. And they raise their tail, they arch their back, and they sometimes even put a bit of mud on their horns. And I think he looked at this male and quickly decided he wasn't going to win that battle. So he just put his hair down and carried on feeding. You see the impala in the front, he's actually, look how his lips are parted. And that's called a Fleming grimace. He's smelt the urine of one of the females and is checking to see if she's an estrus. They've got this thing at the back of their palate called a Jacobson's organ. And once they smell the urine, they pull their lips back, which draws the scent onto that organ and is able to tell them if the female's an estrus or not. Jackie, I'm pretty sure that they would. You know, that bond between a mother and her calf is incredibly strong, and they will. There's actually been numerous photos where they show they actually sacrifice themselves sometimes for their young and try and defend them as much as they can. So I can imagine if something did go wrong, they would definitely go looking for them. Now, a few of these females, you can see how most of them are very heavily pregnant, and what's going to happen in the next few days is they're actually going to go off, and as soon as they're ready to give birth, they're going to leave the herd and they're going to give birth in a thicket, and they're going to keep their lamb there for 2 days. They're going to groom it, and they're going to sort of keep going back and feeding it until it's 2 days old, and then they bring it to join the herd. So you can see that sort of instinct already is kind of being followed by them keeping going to their calf when they've left them in that thicket. It was quite an interesting question. It's amazing as more and more impala are just sort of coming into the scene. There's a few males coming off to our right. I think that's what we heard behind this bush. You can see that those males actually, they've got fully grown horns, and I think that was the little clashing sound I was hearing was they were doing a little bit of a play fight. Probably getting ready for next rutting season. I think we're going to take in the scene for a little bit longer. and sit and enjoy this moment. And we're going to be sending you to another live location.
Back to our two female lions. They still look very interested in the far north distance, and that's where we earlier got audio of what sounded like males, or it could have been other members of the pride, and that's just where they focused at. Obviously, the biggest worry is the food that they've got here. So if it's the males, they'll definitely have a nibble at the wildebeest that they've taken. But if it's the other members of the pride, which I think had been here, I don't see much of a problem there arising. Obviously, the males would have to throw their weight in when they do come here, and also finding out that there is a carcass around here. It's always an interesting interaction to see that happen. So we'll hang around here and see if that unfolds. They sounded a little bit far though, so it's cool. The weather has covered with clouds, so it will give them opportunity to cover ground and be active earlier than they originally would be, just bearing in mind that the Kalahari does become very hot. And down she plops. Full belly, look at that. Stains of blood and sand together. Anna, how long can they go until their next kill? You will realize when I answer these questions, I always give a probability. And with that being said, it just depends on what they had the previous meal and how much of it they had. So with a meal like this, or before I even go there, on average, you're looking at a female being about 150 kilograms of body mass. Now, if you take that in one sitting, they could probably consume about 10% of their own body weight. So you're looking at a good 15 kilos of meat that in one good sitting they can consume at one go. And that would last them a good couple of days, I'd say 4, maybe pushing it to 6 days. So on average, you're looking at about probably, let's say, 7 kilos of meat that an adult lion would need to feed on. So if it's an impala, obviously, and there's more of them, they're not going to be getting as much out of it. But with a wildebeest, they'll be getting quite a significant amount. So also, how many individuals there are around the carcass would also influence how often they'll have to feed or hunt. So all of those things put together give you a rough estimate of what it is. So for example, the wildebeest, if there was the whole pride here, it gives each individual enough for 2-3 days. But if it's just one female, for example, that takes a full wildebeest down, she'd feed on it a couple of days, probably feed 4-5 days on that particular wildebeest, and still be a full for the next for another 4-5 days. So those are just dimensions to make you understand how far a carcass can go with an individual. Hope that is sufficient for your question right there. But you can see she's been stuffed like a piñata. Look, you saw how she was rolling around there, trying to get a very comfortable position for herself. But yeah, with a full belly like that, sometimes it becomes a bit of a tough one, to the point that sometimes you actually find them lying on their backs with their belly up in the sun. And the lion sleeps tonight. On that note, I have to mention this before I forget. Tomorrow, Moritz will be taking over from me. Evan, the darker the male or the mane of the male, the more fights the male has won. Oh, okay. Let me break it down this way. Now, the color of the mane doesn't really signify the amount of times the particular male has fought. What it does, to a certain degree, signify is the amount of testosterone that individual would be producing. And now, if you look at your Kalahari black-maned lions, they would be producing a lot of testosterone naturally. And there's a few factors that contribute to that. One being the terrain, being sand, and that when they walk, it will take a lot out of them. So they have to naturally produce that amount of testosterone. And also the dark of that male would be an intimidation to other males that would be lighter in a confrontation. So if you took a blonde male and a dark male and put, let's say, for argument's sake, put a carcass between them and wanted to see which would feed first, chances are your dark-maned lion would feed first. So it doesn't necessarily mean there's more fights won. It just means that they're producing a lot of testosterone, and obviously testosterone makes them more, I don't want to use a very heavy word, but it's the only word I can think of now, more aggressive, but not, yeah, if you understand what I'm trying to explain there. So that's basically maybe where that theory of a dark-maned lion means it has won a lot of fights. It simply means it's producing that amount of testosterone, or a significant amount of testosterone. You would also see it with the females. I mean, the females here in the Kalahari would also have a tinge of black on their back, and it, to a certain degree, it also goes to that they actually the environment needs them to exert a lot of energy and use a lot of strength when they do walk about, patrolling, when they do hunt, and so on. And that's where the colors is influenced by hormones. Look at the size of those feet. Ginormous. I mean, for an average lion, they wouldn't be as big as that, but because these guys do walk on sand, they need to almost have a bigger paw just so that they don't sink when walking. So it gives them more surface area and help them in walking, just saving energy and being energy efficient. While we stick around with these guys to see what would happen next, I will be sending you off to another very beautiful property in Africa.
Well, I have arrived. I raced all the way here. It's 6:10 in the evening. It's cool. The sun is setting. Hello, you guys. I didn't think you would be here. And I'm not allowed to stay if there's no adult. Oh. I think it's Ngwazi and Shimbu. No, you're not. No, you're one of Heart's little ones. Hello. I miss you so much. Can we quickly zoom into that genital? I can't see if it's completely flaccid. No, it's not. It's not fully extended. We're still determined. So we're going to stay here for approximately 30 more seconds. At least we know we're still here to give you some context. This is Philemon's Den 3, the usual hubbub. But they're at the back entrance. I love you guys very much. I check every day and I thought, okay, I'm going to race from the Leopard all the way at the other side of Torchwood here, hoping there'd be an adult. But there's not, everyone. And unfortunately, I've got to leave. Huh. Bye. I can only see the two of them, but I imagine everybody's there, don't worry. One day it's going to happen. One day. But I'm convinced that we know they're there. They've gone more nocturnal for two reasons. Temperature is far too hot. Both Kat and I are uncomfortable on the vehicle, so uncomfortable. We're seeking shade. You can only imagine what it's like for a hairy mammal. And two, summer, as I've already said, is a feast for the predators. I imagine hyenas are running around from carcass to carcass to carcass. The lions are in Buffelshoek, the Talamasis. There's leopards everywhere. So I think they're really, really busy feeding, which they need for their nutritional requirements. Just going to check on this den to see if there's any signs of life. This is den number 2. That's how close they are. This is the one that this is Ribbon's natal den with Ngwazi and Shimbulu. Oh, and that over there is Mr. Hendry. That's not a hyena. Hi. Yes. So, other than Mr. Hendry, the den is not active. Unfortunately. He's obviously coming to check the dens as well. So yes, I think they've just gone far more nocturnal. So they're very active during the day. They're probably playing and fighting and eating and suckling at night time. So during the day they just sleep. They sleep away this extraordinary heat. And that's my theory. Hyenas. I just want one day to spend time with them. But anyway, that day will come. We are going to now bumble to quarantine and see if anything is happening at that side of the world. It was worth it, though. For all of 30 seconds, it was worth it. Now, I think Heart's offspring are one boy, one girl, but I'm not 100%. Mamed, are you referring to clans or individuals? So this area, Juma, which extends to Buffelshoek, Torchwood, Chitwa, Little Gowrie, is the Juma clan. And there's a neighbouring clan, also known as the Elephants Plains clan. But I think their territories very, very much overlap. And I shouldn't really say territory. They're not entirely territorial that way. They're more territorial over den sites. And they sort of move. Is that a basileer? We have some birds. They move great distances. But in the Juma clan, there's currently 5 cubs. There's currently 5 adults. And, I always forget the number of males, but there's a large number of immigrant males who were not born into the clan like the females were, but they have immigrated into the clan. And then, of course, you've got Swazi and Inzabelli, who are older sub-adults. Oh, no. It's not a basileer. The basileer is on the other tree. I think this is a Tony. Yes. Now, we actually had a bird this morning that caused great debate between all of us. myself included, during the day with that bright white light from the sun. It's very difficult for us to see our monitor or through our binos. And I couldn't decide whether it was a tawny or a steppe, but I'm standing firm that it was a steppe. It was very large, much larger than what you're looking at right now. And when it flew off, it had really sort of feathery, booted legs, which the tawny doesn't have. And I showed it to Rex and I've showed it to a few other people, and the consensus is steppe eagle from this morning. But this one, I think it's a tawny. Although I can't really see the colour of the eye from here. Can we get any closer to the eye? I'm not sure. Tawny eagles are much smaller. You can normally see the difference straight away. And the colour of their eye is very pale, sort of yellowish, light colour. So I think this one is a tawny eagle. But I'm still convinced, actually, that one we had this morning was a steppe. They're very similar, and I'm always happy to admit it when I get it wrong, but I really do think it was a steppe. It was huge. Brent, completely, yes. Their calcium intake is incredibly high from all the bones. They're known as the bone crushers of the bush. Although Nsele was gnawing delightfully on an impala leg today, hyenas really can crunch through skulls, hip bones, femurs. Oh, they can really crush through the big dense bones. It's incredibly powerful jaws, one of the most powerful bites, at least in the mammalian group of animals. And because they do consume so much calcium, the body obviously has to excrete some of that. And when the feces exit the body via the anus, it's not white, but when it dries in the sun, it turns completely white. And if you actually stand on a dried hyena scat, it turns to powder. It just almost vanishes under your foot and it just turns into powder. And you will see other organisms out here eating hyena feces, especially the likes of your leopard tortoises, because it contains so much calcium that they require for the growth of their carapace, which really does not, well, my taste buds do not fancy eating hyena scat, but clearly if you're a leopard tortoise, it works. It gives you that sort of calcium injection that you need. Yeah, what a lovely birding sighting for sunset. So, we really are on our way to quarantine.
Welcome back. When last we left you, or you left us, we had a beautiful scene with a whole lot of impala and one sort of prominent male Inyala that was dominating the scene. And we've come across another really unique male Inyala. And I want you to have a very careful look at his horns. Now, if you see, his left horn actually curves back and down rather than upright, which is an incredibly interesting sort of deformation that he's got going. And I can't imagine it will, assist him too much out in the wild. This will be something that will have occurred from birth, more like a genetic sort of trait rather than a battle wound or something. If something was going to hit a horn that hard, it would actually rather break it rather than bend it. They're not incredibly ductile sort of features. So it is from birth that it would likely have formed that way. Quite an interesting sort of little formation. It does seem to be the only male with this sort of group of females. So I think to a certain extent he's done all right. He's probably intimidated some other males away. And if we go off to the right, you can see that there's a younger male over there. And what's happening to him is quite interesting. If we look at that color of his coat, now if we're watching, look around the neck, you can see that that's quite dark in color. It's starting to resemble that fully grown male that we've just been looking at. But if we have a look at the legs and the belly of this Nyala, you can see that it's more like a rusty brown, so more similar to that female we saw just off to the left and those females off to the right. Perhaps maybe a little bit darker brown, but these males will actually change the color of their coats as they get a bit older. You can see he's starting to grow his horns. And he's probably close to 10 months. It's anywhere between 10 and 14 months that they start to transition and change their colors to that very sort of dark brown or chocolate brown that the fully grown males have. And what's lovely actually with Nyala, you never really take the time to appreciate the beautiful markings that these animals have. And I think what we'll do is we'll have a look at all these females. Look at the tiny, there's a very young male walking into the scene. And it's amazing if you compare the height of him to those other two. He's just started growing his horns. He's nearly the same size. You can see how much the growth of the actual animal slows down as they get older. I mean, look at those three different horn sizes. They're tiny little horns, and there's, you know, sort of medium, and then there's really large horns. I'd say that one of the larger horns is maybe a year and a half, maybe a bit more, and that one with the very small horns, maybe about 6 months, maybe a bit less. But if we're looking at these features of these Nyala, you can actually have a look from the bottom of the feet. You can actually see just in front of the hooves they've got these tiny little white spots. And then as we go up the legs, you can see sort of in the front of the back joints they've got two other white spots, and then towards the inner side of the front legs they've actually got another two, but on each leg. So there's like a one band and then a band just above where it connects to the stomach. And then you see a variety of spots all over those back legs. You can see the one that's cleaning her tail has also got a little bit of a white stripe below the tail. She's got two very prominent stripes, very prominent spots, and then one faint one. And I'm just having a look. Those spots do seem to be, you know, generally around 3, but they're not always in the same exact spot. You can see that they form different patterns amongst all the Nyala. And what's quite beautiful, so they've got about 3 spots at the back leg. Then you see another 2 sort of by the hip joint, just in front of the leg there. And then there's another one white spot sort of right in the middle of the belly. And if I'm looking at all of them, they all seem to have that exact same number of spots, slightly different positions, but all the same number, which is quite special to see. And then of course you've got those beautiful white stripes going down the side, a little white ring around the neck, and even some white spots on the face. You know, one little white spot below the eye, 2 white stripes on that nose, beautiful black right down the middle of those white stripes sort of intersecting it, and then that prominent white spot in line with the mouth. We're looking at those 2 feeding. The one at the back actually has 3 white spots on her face, and then the one in the foreground has 2. So I think those spots, you know, vary a little bit. Very similar to leopard. You know, leopard we often ID by the number of spots just below their whiskers. That first row will count how many are on the left side of her face and how many on the right, and then we'll identify them often that way. You know, call it a 2-3 leopard or a 3-2, depending on the number of spots. There's quite an interesting similarity that we have between these Nyala and leopard. So just like that Nyala we saw earlier, you can see them feeding on these little weeds. This isn't actually grass again. You can see these tiny little plants think that's where that's what's drawn them to this area. It's also quite close to our lodge. And what we do find is, Nyala, Impala and Warthog do tend to hang around the lodges. And it's just for added safety. They've noticed that predators don't tend to get too close to the lodges. So I think this is why they're here, and they're going to feel nice and safe this evening. So we are going to leave them to it and just sit and enjoy this moment. But in the meantime, we are going to send you off to another live location.
We're managing to squeeze one final segment out of these batteries on Rusty. A glorious view out over the Lowveld towards the west to those koppies, those dolerite koppies on which Ulasaba is situated. And I am taking in my final enjoyable smells around here. Syncolostinum bracteosus is in my hand. Beautiful smelling herb. And, well, that's it really, I guess. An absolutely glorious afternoon. A lovely wild dog, lovely leopard, and just a perfect early summer's Lowveld afternoon. And I hope there's going to be a bit of rain in the next little while, because it really is starting to get a bit dry. But I think this is going to be a good wet year. And I'm sure the bush will bounce back to its green magnificence very soon. A couple of rattling sticklers. Otherwise, everything seems very quiet and contemplative as Sunday draws to a close. Hippos away in the distance. Cuckoo. Crickets, lots of flies. Just a lovely Lowveld scented northeasterly breeze. Finally, a dove starts to call. Yes, our Larimore, they are gorgeous colours, and they're subtle too. They're just a very subtle reminder of the blazing sun that's just headed below the horizon. Sort of subtle pinks and gingers up top. Lovely purples down below. Very subtle though. Many, many stories this ancient landscape has to tell, and most of them we have absolutely no inkling of. This place has been continuously inhabited by human beings for at least 20,000 years, on and off. Stone Age, Iron Age. And all their stories lost somewhere beneath the sands of the Lowveld. Spaz, I will miss this about the bush the most. The quiet, the contemplative atmosphere, obviously the beautiful animals. You know, this last little stint, we've seen 9 unique leopards and had 14 leopard sightings, which is just, wow. It's been very special, especially given somebody of my luck. It's been very, very wonderful to spend this last time with them. And I will miss the sunrises and the sunsets this time of the day, and its opposite in the morning. Just when the sun is below the horizon, at the changing of the guard, at the quiet. When it seems that the human being and nature are both most open to each other. Slowly you can start to feel the atmosphere building again as the changing of the guard switches. You can hear the odd rain locust starting up, the crested locusts. A couple of crickets now. A few nocturnal cicadas. What else? Surely an owl will soon call, and maybe even a nightjar or two. And those buzzing flies will go to sleep soon as well, which will be great. What a pleasure. What an absolute privilege. Not only to be here, but to share it with all of you has been, as always, an absolute joy, an honor, and I can't imagine actually a better occupation than taking so many nature lovers around a place I love so much. So thank you all very much for your questions, for your comments, for your patience, for your kindness over the years. I'll hopefully see you again, but when that is, I don't know. Stay safe and happy wherever you are in the world, and we'll see you on the flip side.